what is today? The February 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission. This is a hybrid meeting, participation in person and online through GoToMeeting is possible. You can find instructions for logging on online on the agenda, which can be found on the Town of Harwich website. We're going to start the meeting with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on the agenda this evening is a request for a determination of applicability for 11 Pilgrim Road, map 7, parcel C3, for site improvements, including relocation of a rinsing station and addition construction.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Lynn Hamlin for the applicant. Start you out easy this evening. Have a long evening. I met with Amy before we finalized this project to see what kind of application I should file, and she gave me a couple of recommendations for the project design itself. It's a pretty simple project. It's a lot of renovations to an existing dwelling, but most of the work will occur in the interior of the house. There's a few modifications to the outside. I tried to make it as clear as possible if you couldn't get there, but they're putting in a small addition. It's to be under existing living space. They're closing in a first story porch. If you looked at the little pictures I attached on my narrative, and it will extend approximately 10 square feet beyond the footprint of the existing house. The resource area is in the back of the yard, so the existing house itself is between the construction and the wetland. Also, Amy pointed out that there were 2 rinse stations on the property within the 50-foot buffer zone, so they're removing one and relocating one to be outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. And they're putting a little faucet by the driveway. I just threw that on there because while we were filing an application, trying to be comprehensive. I've shown a work limit line in the rear yard. There's no work or machinery anticipated in the rear yard, just to move the move and remove the rinse stations, but it's so they won't be staging or storing equipment back there, so we're just showing a work limit line. And for the 10 square feet of increased footprint, I've showed approximately 20 square feet or 20 square feet of mitigation plantings in the corner of the backyard closest to the wetland. And I will stop there and see if you have questions.
Thank you. Amy, do you have comments?
As Lynn stated, there's only about 10 square feet of new structure, and it's all landward compared to the closest point of the wetland. They're moving stuff outside of the 50-foot buffer, such as a shower, and putting a new rinse station into the 50 to 100. They do require a little bit of mitigation here. We require 2-to-1 mitigation for work in the 50 to 100-foot buffer. So it only amounts to about 20 square feet of planting, which are shown as a few native shrubs. I would suggest, as stated on the plan, that the specific location of these plants be approved out in the field. And I would recommend approval with a -2 and 3 determination, because it is both resource area, being that it's flood zone, and buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland.
Thank you. So do we have comments or questions from the commission? Could whoever's phone is ringing, please silence their phone? Thank you. Sophia?
I have nothing.
Mark?
No questions.
Brad?
No comments.
No comment.
No
Wayne.
comments, pretty simple project.
I have nothing to say, so I I would
In the
entertain a
audience.
motion.
Excuse me, you want to ask if there's any comments?
Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment or have a question about this project?
Good evening, my name's Alan Campbell. I live at 18 C Street. Also have property that's abutting the site property on the southeast. Question, how much work is going to be done inside the 50-foot buffer zone?
Do you want me to answer that?
Please do,
Um,
yes.
Only work to be done is to remove existing rinse stations. Other than that, there's no work.
Pardon me, remove existing?
They're rinse stations now because we don't have outdoor showers anymore. We have rinse stations. So it's removing the outdoor shower / rinse station out of the 50-foot buffer zone, and that's the only work.
Okay, so there's no work within the 50-foot zone?
No.
Is there going to be additional site coverage?
Please do answer, yes. I think,
It's approximately 10 square feet. 10 square feet. Do you have a plan? I could show
I
you.
do, but it's so small I can hardly
Oh.
see it.
I have a big plan here, if you want to look at it. So it's this little square here, 10 square feet.
Okay, well,
Three-
it says existing building coverage is currently 29%, and the proposed site coverage is 47.3%. Is that an increase of
That's the zoning numbers, and it's probably got to do with driveways and that kind of coverage. There's no increase in the building other than 10 square feet.
okay, so what they're really doing is some interior work
Yes.
and some work on their, under the deck here, is that
Just moving the shower out of the 50-foot buffer.
okay? My concern is that that wetland there has been and is under a tremendous amount of stress from the construction that has gone on in the neighborhood there. Right now, if you go down there, it's overflowed and flooded into areas that don't normally flood. Several years ago, the C Street Extension neighbors got together and paid for a drainage control system because the bottom of C Street flooded there. Where it drains is into the wetland. And any alterations along Pilgrim Road there and the circumference of the wetland seem to impact the wetland, and it's under an awful lot of stress. I just would point that out so that the commission could take that into account in deciding how to deal with a situation that impacts the wetland.
so, sir, may I just ask you one question? I understand your concern. Are you, I don't understand you to be making any suggestions about this project. You're
My
just
suggestion
pointing
would be
out
that
a
it does
problem.
nothing to increase the flooding of the wetland.
Okay, thank you. Would the commissioners, any of the commissioners have anything further to say? Well, then, I think we're ready
Okay.
for a motion.
Okay, I will move that we approve the request for determination of applicability for 11 Pilgrim Road, map 7, parcel C3, with a -2 and -3 determination.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. That's 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation for 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2. It's a request for confirmation of resource area boundaries and associated buffer zones.
Good evening.
Yes,
For the
sir.
record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, now a Tie and Bond Company as of January 1st.
Oh.
We're glad to say that we've merged with them and look forward to the future, working with Tie and Bond as Tie and Bond. So, as you know, there's been a lot of work on this property over the last several years. We've established the resource areas down by the water, down by the beach. We've come forward with a plan to delineate all of the resource areas on the property so that we can start with, you don't see these ANRADs typically, but with a project of, you know, the size of this property and the work that we want to do, we want to make sure that we're on the right track with delineating all the resources. And I'm glad that we had a site visit yesterday with John, Sophia, and Amy. Amy pointed out that there is a coastal bank at the corner of Davis and Snow for that property that you reviewed not too long ago for a house that was built right on the corner there. We looked at the plan and we're in agreement that there is a coastal bank there, so we're going to modify our plan. It comes slightly across the street and modifies the buffer zone on that part of the property. So essentially, it's corner of Davis is here. This is the property. So basically, there's a small coastal bank that pushes the 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer partially into the property. So we'll update our plan to reflect that change of adding that coastal bank. The other resource areas are very well defined. You've got the coastal dune, the coastal beaches. Anybody that's been out there can see that the beach really comes right up to the hardscape. The coastal banks are all the bulkheads that are out there, the front retaining walls that are facing the beach. As we've progressed further into the site and look to do some redevelopment within the site, the flood zone encroaches into the property all the way back to the redevelopment where behind the buildings, and there is an interior, technically a coastal bank, 92-1, where the flood zone intersects the landform within this area of the property, which is this area back here. There is no real significance to the interest of the act other than acting as a vertical buffer for storm damage. So typically you have a 50-foot no disturb zone to protect the interests, the local interests of wildlife habitat, pollution prevention within the adjacent resource areas. So we have this interior short coastal bank that would suggest does not have any major significance to the interests of the act, and that it would reflect that we meet the performance standards of the state regulations and not the 50-foot no disturb zone of that, as this is a fully developed lot. It is a man-made coastal bank, but it is a coastal bank per the Wetlands Protection Act regulations. So we're not conceding the fact that it is a coastal bank. We'd like to recognize, though, that it is a fully developed area that really wouldn't warrant the protection of that 50-foot no disturb zone from that driveway and series of walls within a loading dock area behind this building. That's really the only, other than what Amy pointed out as the adjacent coastal bank, really the only coastal bank that we've identified that we needed clarification on as far as the management within the buffer zones of that coastal bank. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have.
Amy?
With the revisions that Sean described, putting the, recognizing the coastal bank on the adjacent property and having buffer zone onto this property, I would agree with their resource area delineation. As stated, there are artificial coastal banks on the site, retaining walls such, they don't perform the performance standard, they don't perform nourishing any downdrift beaches, which a coastal bank typically would. They don't provide habitat. All they are is a vertical buffer. So they've acknowledged them in their plan, but the resource of significance the resources of significance I would find would be your traditional coastal bank that you have, the coastal dune, and then the land under water bodies, the channel into Witchmere Harbor as being, going forward, the resources that you would look to make sure whatever their proposed project will be in the future meets the performance standards for those resource areas. So with the one change that Sean's gonna put on copies of plans, I would recommend that you approve the resource delineation for this location on this property. It's not for the whole property, it's for this specific location.
Thank you. Comments from commissioners? Wayne?
I don't have anything to add. I have
Jim?
no comments.
No comments.
Brad? Mark? Sophia?
No comments.
I have nothing, so is there anyone in the public here who cares to ask a question or make a comment on this matter? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the resource area delineation with the change discussed at the meeting tonight, and approve for the area discussed tonight at the location of 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel P2.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. That's 6-0.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda this evening is Route 28 road layout between Bank Street and Saquatucket Harbor for sidewalk construction by Mass DOT on the south side of Route 28. Before we get going, a couple of things. One is, I did see some of you come in after we got going. Please, anybody who's here who hasn't signed in on the sign-up sheet in the back of the room, please do before you leave. The second thing is, what the items we're considering tonight on this issue are items that are jurisdictional to the Conservation Commission, which essentially are limited to any part of this project which is within 200 feet of what has been called various things, but it's Cold Brook as it runs under Route 28. So please, anybody who's here who would like to make a comment, please keep in mind that we cannot consider any discussion of any other part of this project here tonight. We cannot approve or disapprove any other part of this project tonight. And please limit your comments or questions to that part of this project only. Having said all that, welcome.
Thank you.
Please tell us who you are and
Sure. I'm Steve Rhodes, and I'm here tonight with my colleague Taylor Donovan. I'm the project manager on this project, representing the town and Mass DOT. We are working with VHB as a consulting company with the town. Taylor is the environmental scientist, and she'll be talking about the compliance, and I'll give you guys a quick rundown on the project itself and the work proposed in the resource areas. So I'm going to point to the screen. Keep trying to talk to you and talk to both. So this is the project limits. We start at Bank Street and we go about 3/4 of a mile to Gorham Road. And this project proposes to tie a sidewalk in, reconstruct an existing sidewalk and build new sidewalk on the south side of Route 28 up until the Saquatucket Harbor parking lot. And then we cross the north side of Route 28 and extend to Gorham Road. This is a Mass DOT funded project. The town is paying for the design and is the proponent of the project. Tonight with me is Lincoln Hooper, DPW Director, and Tom Carrier from Mass DOT, the project manager. If there's any questions for those gentlemen. Let's see, Mass DOT will be funding the construction of the project. The town has worked for a number of years to get to this funding track where this is a state and federally funded project. So we're really excited to be here at this point. We're about to go into our final design submission, and hopefully have this project advertised this summer, which will get work started in the fall or following spring. So the work within the resource area is roughly in the eastern third of the project, which is highlighted in yellow on the screen here in the locust map. Just a couple site photos to get situated. This is taken looking west on Route 28. So we're looking at the culvert crossing of Coldbrook, right between where the SUV is pulling out of the driveway and the oncoming eastbound car is heading toward the photo taker. The sidewalk here will go on the left side of the road. And then we're switching orientations here and looking east, a little bit up the hill. Again, the culvert is right about underneath the red SUV there. The sidewalk will be going on the right side of the road here. So these plans have a bit of color going on here, but I'll just walk through the work itself. So the sidewalk here is proposing to go on the south side of Route 28. It's going to be a 6-foot wide asphalt sidewalk, and it's going to be built directly behind granite curbing that will be installed along the edge of roadway. To support the sidewalk construction across the culvert, we are proposing a short gravity retaining wall. There'll be a bridge barrier, kind of like a handrail type barrier mounted on top of the wall to be kind of a safety element for pedestrians as they cross that. That wall is about, I want to say 150, 170 feet long. And below that wall is a grading tie-in that ties in before any direct impacts to the resource areas. That sidewalk continues along the south side of the road, again to the Saquatucket Harbor parking lot, and then it ends at that point on the south side, and it has a crosswalk that is going to repurpose the existing crosswalk that's there today to extend the sidewalk to the east to Gorham Road. At that point, we get into the buffer zones of the Andrews River, but we don't continue across that culvert at that point. So that is the summary of the work. I will hand it over to Taylor to talk a little bit about the compliance aspects.
Yeah, and if you want to just go back to the impact, I can just speak to the resource areas that are within the project site and within the limits. So it's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but if you have any of the plans in front of you, in the blue hatching, you can see temporary impact to riverfront area. The yellow hatch is showing the temporary impact to 200-foot riverfront area. The orange is showing 100-foot riverfront area permanent impact as proposed, and the green is permanent impact within 200-foot riverfront area. And just to give you some sense of what exactly the work is within those areas, the temporary impact is a result of vegetation clearing and grubbing, installing erosion controls and installing tree protection measures. And then the permanent impacts are essentially from constructing the sidewalk and full depth pavement in those areas. The pink hatching, which goes throughout the east side of this first slide, and then you saw in the following slides, is all areas within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And so there will be, we're showing work in that area, but we're not showing that there will be any permanent impact to flood storage capacity in those areas, and there are currently no performance standards for land subject to coastal storm flowage, but we don't think that this work, as proposed, will have any negative impacts on the ability of the site to retain floodwaters or receive floodwaters. And then additionally, it's not called out in any color, but within the 50-foot no disturb on either side of the bank of the rivers, that kind of essentially includes, the same work that was included in the riverfront area impact of installing portions of sidewalk, grading, installing guardrail and erosion controls. That's, yeah. I think it's a good enough overview of the impacts, and I'm happy to speak more if any of you have questions on any specifics. And then, yeah, if you want to flip to the regulatory compliance slide. Didn't want to go too in-depth just for presentation purposes, but it is all included in the NOI. I listed out each of the performance standards, but generally work within the riverfront area, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the 50-foot no disturb zone is unavoidable just as the nature of the project. The roadway currently crosses these areas, and so to do any improvements, we need to do work in the areas. We are seeking approval as a limited project for under 10.53 F3, and that, just want to make sure I'm giving you 10.533F, excuse me. for maintenance and improvement of existing public roadways, limited to widening less than a single lane, adding shoulders, correcting substandard intersections, and improving drainage systems. And so we do list out the performance standards in the NOI. We generally meet all of them. One of them that we're not able to provide just because of site constraints is restoration for the riverfront area impact. So we would be seeking relief from that requirement with the limited project status. Additionally, we are seeking a waiver from the 50-foot no disturb zone for the reasons previously stated, just that the work is unavoidable in those areas due to the location of the roadway. And additionally, similar to the state required restoration, we're seeking relief from the 3-to-1 mitigation for riverfront area impact due to site constraints. After previous initial comments received, we are looking at additional areas that we can add some native shrubs and do some additional seeding. And I will have Steve point out on the plan which specific area that is. But just with the site constraints, there's not much room within the state highway layout to provide that restoration area.
Yeah, there's a little swath in front of Brack's Restaurant where there's some shrubs that are there today, which are going to be removed to install the sidewalk. And so we're thinking that can be a decent area where there's some available space to replant, to get some plantings back in that space.
I think that's all I had on that side, so.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
I think you want to be asking for a limited project status under 310 CMR 10.24C1, which is a coastal limited project. The one you cited is an inland, and this is pretty title, and it is considered coastal bank, so minor thing, but I think that's the citation you want to be going with rather than the inland bank. In general, I think this project is very needed, specifically in this area. It's like taking your life in your hands when you walk past Brack's to try to go up to Colonial Way. I tempted fate myself the other day when I was out there looking at what vegetation might be coming down, so I could see it in person. The vegetation right along the top of the culvert there and on the banking is largely what you'd be removing. It looks to be privet and honeysuckle there, which are both invasive species. There are a couple of trees right near there on the south side of the culvert. Would those be compromised?
How far down the bank roughly are they?
They're probably between 5 and 10 feet from
From the road?
the road.
Edge, I think those would be taken out as part of the clearing operation, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So again, I think the project is necessary from a safety standpoint, and it does qualify as a limited project, meaning that it's maintenance and improvement of an existing roadway, not greater than 1 lane in size. So it does have some leeway to it for the regulations. The Rivers Act, this is redevelopment essentially, or development with an existing developed riverfront area. So you are proposing more than the 10% or 5,000 square feet of disturbance, which would typically be allowed, in that the onus is on you to prove that you're not harming or improving the riverfront area there. And it sounds like your assessment is that it's not harming it in any way. It may not necessarily be an improvement to the resource area, but that it's not having any additional adverse impact. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, essentially that it wouldn't have any additional negative
Okay.
impact. And then for anything beyond that, just seeking relief as the limited project status to
Yeah.
fully meet that performance standard.
Got you. I brought up the fact that typically we do require mitigation in certain ratios for projects in different proximities to wetlands, and I think it's important that the town and the state be held to the same standards as what we hold to everybody else. So I understand that you are going to be replanting approximately 200 square feet of area. Typically, we would be requiring people to show a formal planting plan for something of this nature. Can Can you, and typically prior to approval, can you go over the stormwater improvements? Because in a way, improvements for stormwater management can be mitigation as it's improving the water quality getting into the system.
Sure. So there's two components to the stormwater. The majority of the project is simply adjusting the existing structures, catch basins and leaching basins that exist along the roadway. Mass DOT is maintaining the drainage on the roadway within Route 28, and they simply want to adjust that drainage to the new curb that'll be installed to support the sidewalk. So that's one component of it. That happens in a couple instances within the resource area. The second component is there is going to be an improvement at the low point coming down from the hill there in front of Racks, where there's two existing, I believe, interconnected leaching catch basins, and we're going to take those offline, install deep sump catch basins, and put those to a dedicated leaching structure that'll have a drain manhole in between them. So there'll be, some sediment captured in the deep sumps. There'll be some general water quality improvements in the stormwater handling in that location. So that is not the impetus of the project, but that is one location that we're going to improve the existing drainage infrastructure.
Mhm. And just one more point I have is on what we call a mitigation constrained site, which this might meet the criteria for, is that you can't fully mitigate because of your site constraints. If we find that the project is not going to have an adverse impact to the wetland resource area, we can approve it with fees in lieu of mitigation. And what we do for that is, in lieu of doing some mitigation on the site, if there's really no place to do it, there's a set amount that gets contributed that goes into a wetlands fund that this commission is in charge of to improve other wetland resource areas in this town, such as, like, we're doing a Herring River study currently. We've increased buffer zones to wetlands on public properties and things like that. So that typical amount is, and it was discussed at a public meeting, is $4 per square foot of area. I'm not saying that that's how the commission should or will go, but it is an option this commission has. And again, just want to make sure we hold the town and the state to the same standards as we do the rest of the citizens of this town.
Just one correction on the area that we're looking to plant. It's about 2,000 square feet.
Yep.
So that's,
And
that doesn't make the criteria, but still.
Right, because your permanent proposed alteration is 4,806. Yep, so it certainly helps, and the stormwater helps too.
All set? Okay, comments, questions from commissioners? Sophia?
Not at this time.
Nothing at the moment.
Brad?
Sure, thanks. Can you describe how the sidewalk is going to interact with the bank above Colebrook? Right now, you've got a little bit of dirt patch. You don't have a lot of room for a 6-foot sidewalk. Are you going to raise up that bank? How's that going to support the sidewalk?
Yeah, so this slide here is kind of depicting how that'll go in an elevation view. So the existing ground, Route 28 roadway is here. We're gonna basically find the edge of the existing roadway and put the granite curb in, then the 6-foot wide sidewalk, and then you have this retaining wall with the barrier. Below that, there's the slope, which will basically be reconstructed at its existing grade for about 3 or 4 feet off the face of the wall. That all happens uphill of the existing culvert head wall that's out there today. So there should be no impacts to the pipe or to the slope below, say, the midpoint of that slope.
Okay, thank you. Any riprap there? What's your stabilization method for that location?
So this will be grassed. We can employ, we're not planning any hardscape rock or anything like that at this point. We're just essentially planning to kind of replant with grass and seeding there on the slope.
It looks like more space than I picture, but that's the design. Okay, so I've got some other questions on mitigation options, and I know this is a limited maintenance project, but the culvert is in tough shape. Has there been any discussion between DOT and the town on using other DOT resources to replace the culvert concurrently with this project?
To date, we have not had those discussions. If we were going to go down that avenue, it would have to be pursued as a separate project at this point, and Tom, feel free to chime in if that's incorrect, but I think that would be the scenario.
I have some things to say, but MassDOT and
You have to speak in the mic, sir, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Tom Courier. I work for MassDOT. I'm the MassDOT's PM on this project, working with Lincoln and Stephen and VHB. So we evaluated the culvert and found it okay, and sort of out of the scope of this sidewalk project. But you have something you want to add, right?
I do.
All right, let me get out of your way.
Link Hooper, DPW Director. Working with Amy, the conservation agent, we feel that the culvert, this particular culvert, and the one at Hoyt Road is undersized for the Colebrook project that exists. So right now, we are in discussions with NRCS as a funding source and Mass DOT in trying to connect the pieces. It has really nothing to do with this current project. This would be a ways off, but we are working towards that goal. That not because of degradation of the culvert, but because it would help the whole Coybrook project with tidal flushing.
Right? I think the mitigation would be exceed what you required, obviously, for culvert replacement. What did you, what analysis did you do to evaluate the status of the culvert? The head walls and the wing walls look terrible. There's tremendous erosion on either side. How did you evaluate the culvert status?
I did not. I am trying to put a couple of players in place in order to get these replaced at a later date. But the town did not. This is Mass DOT infrastructure.
Yeah.
We did not evaluate it. We looked at the size. We saw that it was undersized and
Yeah.
needed some help.
Yep. At some point, there's a lot of erosion occurring on the
Yeah.
head
Yep.
walls. I know there are DOT programs that are available right now to replace culverts. I imagine it's pretty hard to integrate the concepts at this point. So, thank you. The second comment is on stormwater. I think stormwater improvements beyond what you described at this location would be really valuable for the aquatic health of Colebrook. So I would encourage you to look at enhanced stormwater improvements. I know you're meeting regulatory requirements, but is there something that can be done beyond what you've proposed? And to me, that would satisfy mitigation requirements. Very important resource area in my mind, and so if you could investigate whatever could be done to enhance stormwater improvements at the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
No, I have no additional comment. Brad covered my questions. All set.
I actually do have one question. Is there, do sidewalks have to be salted by the town? Do you know, Amy?
That, it would be Mass Dot, so I'm not sure how that gets taken care of, but I think somebody here might.
I don't believe we salt that sidewalk.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And, you know, if there's additional mitigation required, we'd be more than happy to include that in the project. And Steve, you're going to submit the planting plan, right?
Correct, yeah, we'll have we're coming up on the eve of our final submission, as I mentioned, so we can include a landscaping plan in that to get details on the areas that we're looking to replant.
Great.
We just thought the culvert replacement would jeopardize the schedule of this project. It's not really, I mean, it's an adequate culvert right now. It's not in danger of failing.
Yep.
I agree that it's not in the best of shape, but
Yeah.
we wanted to advance this sidewalk. The town has worked incredibly hard to get this thing going. And you achieved a miracle to get us to build one sidewalk and not two.
Right.
We just don't do that anymore. And our retired District 5 project development engineer, Pam Hasner, you may know who she is. She worked a miracle with our Complete Streets people in Boston and got permission to do this so we could keep this thing moving.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Two different concepts, but it was
Yeah.
worth asking.
But we are starting to look at that, and like, as Link said, we had a meeting with NRCS and discussed, they're putting in for funding for study and design of a new culvert there, but that will take a little time.
So I have a question, further question about mitigation, which is, there's a lot of work, has already been noted, on Cold Brook, north of Hoyt Road, but as far as I know, it stops at Hoyt Road. And I'm wondering whether there's any area between Hoyt Road and Route 28 where that might be a possibility. I don't know who owns any of that land or whether it's a possibility, but whether one possibility would be to do some mitigation by replacing some, which I suspect, I don't know, I suspect there's a lot of invasives in there, but by planting some native vegetation there. Have you looked at that? Have you considered that possibility?
We have not looked in that area to date.
I think a lot of it is private, once you get out of the MassDOT, the footprint of the state highway. I know at least on Witchmere Harbor Drive, the property immediately upstream of the culvert there, that is all private, and they actually just did a restoration there.
I see.
So I'm not sure about the farther up, but I'm pretty sure a lot of that is private. The
Right,
shoreline
there's
there.
a property with a very steep bank going down there on Witchmere Harbor Drive. Right,
It's private.
right.
Mr. Chair, we did permit a rehab project that included Phragmites removal.
Yep.
And so that,
That's the same one?
yeah,
Yeah.
that
right.
frag extends further upstream, it's still there.
Yeah.
I don't know how that fits into your
Yeah,
requirements.
Phragmites removal would be fabulous.
But
I don't think the stormwater improvements.
I favor stormwater for that location
see.
if possible.
Okay. All right, I have nothing further. I suspect there are maybe a few people in the room who have questions or comments. I would remind you once again that please, if you have something to say, restrict your comments to the subject at hand here. We can't spend time talking about other aspects of this project, and we can't do anything about them anyway. So, is there anyone in the room, in the public, who would like to speak or ask a question or make a comment here?
I'd like to comment. Bruce Young, at the top of the hill on Route 28, on the north side of 28. I've been there for about 22 years, and I've noticed the increase in the tidal flow there and the erosion that's going on both sides of that banking. I don't know, I think you said at first 200 square feet, now it's 2,000 square feet on replantings. I don't know what that is, the distance down the river towards the harbor for replanting, because the erosion, there's already a couple maple trees that have fallen in. I'm sure they're gonna have to be removed. And what that replanting is gonna be, is it gonna help that banking with future erosion, with that water coming out of the Cold Brook, because it's ripping through there now?
So I could touch on that. So we're not actually planning to replant the bank or anywhere along the river as part of this project. We currently have a right-of-way, so the state has to acquire easements for work outside the state layout, and we have a certain space, basically parallel to the roadway, that we've carved out for work that the contractor can do. So those plantings that I mentioned would occur basically along the frontage of the roadway, to kind of just add trees back in where we have to clear some out. So it wouldn't directly say that.
The photo.
Yeah, it's the same area of the photo that we showed earlier. So it wouldn't be linear in nature along the river.
Right, I
the
get you.
brook. Yeah,
Nothing's going to protect that banking on the other
correct,
side.
not as part of this project. Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
Barbara Nickerson, Harwich Port. It's really unfortunate we can't talk about the whole project, but I will abide by your request. Couple of things. As Amy said, I think the state and town need to have their feet held to the fire for mitigation for this project. I think maybe stormwater is a big issue here, and it needs to be addressed more than what they're proposing at this point. But then again, I will go outside of this area, and I hope the stormwater along the whole project gets a little bit better than it is with the existing drains and everything else. I mean, you got it going into Witchmere Harbor, that counts also, not just Cold Brook, however. Couple of other things, you know, I've dealt with in lieu fees before, and, you know, they're a quick way to write a check, hand it off. doesn't do the, maybe it'll do some good on the Herring River, it doesn't do any good for the impact to this particular project, for this particular area. This part of 28 Harwich Port is part of the cultural district now that we got designation for a year ago. And if we're going to be removing all this vegetation here on Coldbrook, I really think that we need to have some sort of mitigation requirement along this area so that when you're walking down to Sacotucket and you cross the bridge at Coldbrook, that it looks like a stream, like it's supposed to look at intertidal area, not just, South Yarmouth, where there's nothing to, no shade on the critters in the stream or anything else. So I think that needs to be held. We need to hold their feet to the fire on that. As far as other types of mitigation, I think the private landowners along Coldbrook and other parts in the Harwich are very open-minded when it comes to having work done, even if it's on their property, or if it's going to help the betterment of the water quality and some of the land and stuff. So I think that's something that should absolutely be explored before you just shut it down because it's private property. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything further to say here?
Susan Tomich, 24 Saquatucket Point. I represent the South, two associations, South Harwich Shore Association with 33 homes and Saquatucket Bluffs Association with 43 homes. We are all in agreement that this is an extremely important project. That particular area that we're talking about tonight, Amy's right on the mark. In 2019, August 4th, I was driving westbound on Route 28. There was a woman with a double stroller coming in the opposite direction. A truck came up over the hill and had a choice of hitting her or head on with me. I ended up having to go off the road, and the woman was saved, obviously very shaken. I was extremely shaken, and I don't even want to tell you what the truck driver said when he got out of the car. It was a very, very traumatic experience for me, and all I can think of is, what if we slow this project down? We're just waiting for an accident. I think that area, when the sidewalk goes in, I actually think it will help the cultural aspects of this town and the area. I think it will improve home values. I think it will improve businesses to the middle of the town. Very important. But that particular area we're talking about tonight is extremely important. It really needs to have a sidewalk there because there's nowhere to go. If a truck is coming towards you or a car is coming towards you, you can't jump over the guardrail. You're going to end up down in the culvert. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anything further? And please do, if you have something to say, please restrict it to values that are associated with Wetlands Protection Act. Anything further? Okay, I don't hear any further comments. I think it's time for us to discuss what the next steps are here. I think there's been discussion about mitigation. Personally, I think maybe we need to see a more developed plan which addresses the mitigation issues, the drainage issues, and any further mitigation that can be done before we act on this. I don't know. That's my opinion. Do others agree?
Yeah, John, I agree with you, and therefore I would recommend that we continue this hearing until the town and the state have had an opportunity to address some of those issues and come back to us with the revised plan.
Amy?
I have a suggestion in terms of the mitigation. So I don't want to delay this any farther than it is, but if it's an opportune time, since we're talking about stormwater improvements, looking at that outfall that goes into Witchmere Harbor, that I have the plans for, it drains 1,700 linear feet of Route 28 directly into Witchmere Harbor. If that is a way to incorporate that, that would be a massive mitigation for this project. We don't want it to derail things farther, or take up more time, but if you're gonna be continuing to look at mitigation, to me, if that could be looked at, because right now it poured right into Witchmere Harbor, if that could be better treated and infiltrated, that would take care of your mitigation requirement completely, in my mind.
I would agree with Amy 100%. That was an issue that we discussed in Lane at least a year, if not a few years ago, and have been struggling to find a solution to that problem. And if that problem could be solved as mitigation for this project, it would be wonderful.
I'm happy to get you everything that I have. I know Link has the same things, and you don't want to stall this, but if the commission's asking for mitigation, that would be the best.
Yes, sir.
And MassDOT's not opposed to helping with the outfall. I mean, it's draining our roadway. However, that would kill this project for this fiscal year. We would never be able to get that work incorporated into this design at this point. We've already got the right-of-way accepted. MassDOT people are out there appraising and negotiating with the abutters now for the easement rights we need to build this. Now, I don't know anything about the culvert situation per se, but it sounds like there's a lot of right-of-way acquisition required to execute that. What I would
I'm not-
suggest is
The homeowner, sorry.
is that we advance it as a separate project. That'd probably be the most effective way to get it done. And there's
Okay.
probably some funding out there that we can use to do it.
Okay.
And
We had struggled to make contact with individuals from MassDOT for a number of years. Now that we have you.
I'm your fella.
Now that we have you, you're
Yeah,
not,
I can put you in touch with the people you need to speak with about that, and
because the homeowner.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
Yeah, the
Big fan of
homeowner
those.
who's it's actually on, because the pipe itself is actually on a private property, even though everything's in the road up until that point, he's extremely amenable to it.
Yeah,
He had wanted, tried back in the day to help too,
It's-
so.
and most abutters are that way, and for worthwhile projects like this.
Okay.
However, we still have legal
Yeah.
requirements, a really convoluted, many-step type process
Okay.
to acquire the rights we need.
Okay.
But Steve, I wanted to mention, you'll get that mitigation plan in advance of the submission, PS&E submission. Just, if you could generate that plan for the commission here and send it to them, in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah. Yep, we
Awesome.
should be able to
That'd
send
be
that.
great.
Yeah.
And, okay, well, you have other options that we've talked about tonight for mitigation possibilities, so. But I will be in touch.
Yeah, good.
The other
I
one.
appreciate your input, and we'll sharpen our pencils.
So our next meeting is March 6th. We do require all new information a week prior to that hearing, which only gives you a week to do it. So would you like the March 6th meeting or the March 20th?
I think March 20th would be better, just have time to coordinate, between us. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so we would need information the week prior.
Okay, Brad has a comment?
I've got a comment. So does this mean that we could condition this project to have the mitigation focus on that culvert at a later date?
I was thinking about that. It might be kind of difficult for approval contingent upon something that we don't know if it's a possibility yet, but, yeah, I'm not sure. So I think that
Because otherwise, we're back in limbo with that concept. We've been
well,
working
they
on
have
it for
other,
at least 10 years.
yeah, they have other potential ways to mitigate for this one directly. I think we certainly mention it in the order of conditions, but I'm not sure how we could tie it. Just off the top of my head, I'm not sure how you could enforce it.
How well is that drainage connected to this whole project?
I've seen the plans, but I don't pretend to
Which
know.
road is the drainage going down?
Snow End.
Snowman, okay. So there are structures, I'm assuming that we're making minor adjustments to as part of this project to just reset a framing rate a few feet to the curb line. That'll maintain that connection to that drainage.
But drainage down here in this 400 feet or so is all downhill from there. So I can't imagine how anything draining down here has anything to do with that culvert up there.
It
Unless there's a
doesn't, but
pumping
it's-
station, which I highly doubt.
It's in the that extent is within the project area, and I would consider it, because this site in particular, where you're proposing work, is mitigation constrained, that an option would be to look
Right.
up elsewhere, but
But
we'll let you figure out what you can do.
Yeah.
we shouldn't expect that anything will physically tie in down here. Drainage in this area will in any
No.
way physically tie in with the drainage up at Snowing Road. Right.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Talking to Mr. Courier, we can take a look at this. The problem is, back in the day, Mass DOT would tie everything in with RCP, concrete pipe, and then put overflows out. We could certainly take a look at it, anything within the project limits, and see if DOT is amenable to that.
We use leaching galleys a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a big project in Chatham a few years ago with the two roundabouts and so on. On 28, there are massive galleys in the job lot, parking lot. What we don't like to do is put the galleys in the roadway, because they have a tendency to fail.
Yeah, done properly. Filter fabric, you know.
Well, it's tough, though, it's very
Yeah.
tough. So we prefer to keep them off the roadway, and, we'll get with Steve and we'll see if we can do that. I can't promise anything, but we'll see if we can do that. And that should help, if we're successful in finding some locations where we have catch basins in place and add leaching capacity to that. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. But what we can't do is trigger additional right-of-way requirements. That would kill us.
We will get you the old plans and info that we have. I mean, you have them, but I'm sure too, but we have them readily available from,
The culvert, that outfall?
yep.
Yeah.
I have one question through you, Mr. Chair. Who are you dealing with at DOT? I remember putting you in touch with somebody,
I don't
this is a
remember the
couple of
name.
years ago.
Not
No,
this
it wasn't,
gentleman.
was it Pam Hasner that I put you in touch
No,
with?
Andrea Coates is the new.
maybe,
I
it was a
contacted-
gentleman.
I contacted
You-
Andrea and a fellow with the environmental,
Yeah,
and, it's tough to get an independent project like that going without local sponsorship.
well, hopefully we have some good collaboration now. So. All right, so you're asking for a continuance to March 20th? That's a Wednesday, right?
Is it?
It is.
Okay.
I just had to check myself.
We normally meet on Wednesdays. This is an anomaly, so. All right, March 20th.
Okay. So, can we have a motion, please?
Sure. I will move that we continue the hearing with a notice of intent for the town of Harwich Route 28 road layout between Bank Street and Saquotucket Harbor to our meeting of March 20th, 2024.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll give a minute for the room to clear out a little bit. I think a lot of
Okay.
people are here for that one.
Just a reminder, anybody who came in, didn't sign in, please do. Yeah. Yes.
Set the law down.
Just gotta keep it under control. We're going to wait a moment here until we have all the commissioners.
I couldn't get in. I got bumped out. Some weird error messages.
4 Cottage Ave. We have a notice of intent for 4 Cottage Ave, map 6, parcel G1-5-2, SE 32-2548, for replacing an existing marine bulkhead with stone revetment and relocation of coastal stairs.
Mr. Chair, you may want to announce number 5 as well, so we can talk about them together. It's 4 and 5
Oh,
Cottage.
yeah, I see that. So, and 5 Cottage Ave, map 6, 2-1, SE 32-2549, for replacing an existing marine bulkhead with a stone revetment and relocation of access stairs. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Bob Perry, Cape Cod Engineering, working with the owners of 4 Cottage and 5 Cottage Avenue. Costello and Harris families are number 4 on the west, and then Edmund Costello and his family have number 5. We went through a discussion a couple weeks ago describing the project to take this failing steel bulkhead and change it to a preferable sloped textured stone revetment. Everybody would agree it's a better feature for that area. There are vertical walls, but they're more collected off to the east. And I think we were pretty well settled on the details, and the topic turned to mitigation. And so we stepped away for a couple of weeks and brought back a plan that would show nice, diverse crop of mitigation plantings along the top of the revetment. And we've set that up so that the landings were accessible. It sort of dies into the common area so that if there was a group there, if they dropped something off that landing, they probably could get it more easily. And it's 518 square feet on number 4 and 511 square feet on number 5. And it moves the vegetation on the property about 16 feet or more back from the top of the steel wall. So we have a combined effect of a sloping interstitial stone collection and native planting. So that's where we are. We submitted I think 12 or so copies of the mitigation plan, and then we actually changed the plan of record that would also show the revised mitigation areas. So that was the summary of the change. Otherwise, there have been no changes. Thanks.
Thank you. Amy?
I appreciate the changes to the plan in terms of the plantings proposed and the diversity that has been added there. I think it will be an improvement to the area. I am still a little concerned that number 4, while the planting I consider a benefit, again, I don't know if I necessarily consider it mitigation because it was removed without authorization, probably in 2015, 2016, and then just planted with grass. We probably would have authorized removal of invasives had they been invasive vegetation there, but we wouldn't have allowed lawn. So and I believe it was the same owner at the time, so I just am not sure that on number 5, I'm all set. But for number 4, I just am not sure that I see what you propose as mitigation as actual mitigation, because it's replanting an area that was unlawfully disturbed for the most part.
I had spoken with the applicants after the last meeting, and we wanted to get, a little bit more information also. And the area that you see there in 2012 imagery was from the information that I got, it was a troublesome and constantly dying off collection of rugosa rose mixed in with bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fair to say there were other things in there too. I'm told again, many people do things in their yards and they don't quite understand all the regulations, and they made efforts to try to cure some of that problem. And then I think at one point, it just was decided it's too much salt kill, and they can't do it. So the mitigation component of this project is several-fold. There's a steel wall there today that the applicants were looking to replace. And I think it's probable that if they really wanted to do that, they could, and they'd probably still have a mitigation strip that they'd be required to have. But the technical discussions and looking at a better, they're losing land by proposing a stone revetment. Stone revetments occupy a lot of real estate. So there's a mitigation component to the improvement in the CES, which is the coastal engineering structure. And with respect to the value of one planting strip versus another planting strip, this planting strip is 100% native. I think it's kind of nice, actually. You recommended the butterfly weed, and I said, sounds awesome, orange and yellow. We have the goldenrod with the beach grass, we have the beach plums, we have the butterfly weed. And we are, instead of 11 feet back from the top of wall, we're 16 feet back from where the top of the wall was. So I think there is a mitigation factor to the overall, and we have parity between the two properties. When we go over to the property at, I think it's 4 Lincoln, there's about a very similar strip of vegetation that's over there. So I don't see any reason to expand the plantings any further into number 4. I don't know, we're going back to 2012 or 2014, and it would just seem punitive, and I don't know if there's any really reason to do that.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything more to say, Amy?
I would agree that the revetment is a better alternative than a traditional bulkhead environmentally and functionally as well. So I'm not opposed to the project.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. Sophia?
I think your plant looks great. I agree with Amy that it doesn't seem quite like it doesn't quite flush out, in my opinion. But I think overall it's an improvement, and I'm okay with it. So that's all.
I'd support the project as it is right now currently. As I see it, it's going to be a significant improvement over what's been there for quite some time, so I'm okay to go forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I think I agree with Amy's comments, but I also think at the last hearing, we discussed bumping out the proposed to 6 feet or so, so I think there was some compromise there. Have we discussed a condition of no herbicides, fertilizers, or pesticides?
That would be, it's a typical condition that we put on all projects now, so
Right.
certainly would be for here, no fertilizers, even organic, no pesticides or herbicides. But it bears
I think it's-
repeating here.
I
that
think it's worth asking if that would be compatible with the property owners too.
I haven't seen any, like, over-healthy turf lawns here. I know Nantucket Sound is a very dilute water body. You're close to Allen's Harbor. Certainly, I don't sense any objection to no pesticides, no herbicides. I think occasional organic fertilizer on a lawn is sometimes not a bad thing in a dilute watershed environment that you have here. But I don't think we're going to argue with you about it.
Okay. Yeah.
But, for example, good thick topsoil and a native lawn like Cape Cod seed or what I call lynx mix, which is a fescue mix, it looks great. All you have to do is give it a little bit of water.
Yeah.
So we don't want restrictions on irrigation. We're not developing the property.
No, we haven't restricted irrigation. We know that especially for properties such as this that are directly along the sound, you need water there. So we haven't restricted that, but we do restrict, I mean, it's for everybody that comes in front of us, so.
It's a standard, you've got a standard
Yeah.
condition, and I think they can work with that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd just like to add, I think the days of that water body being considered dilute are long gone. It is a badly eutrophied water body.
Nantucket Sound is.
90% of the eelgrass is gone.
Wow.
Eutrophication is a massive problem.
I thought the eelgrass was recovering out there, but
It's,
We've done some studies, and it's everywhere, or at least from my perspective. You're the guy, you're the marine biologist.
yeah, I think we've lost a very large percentage of the eelgrass in the area due to eutrophication, so anything we can do to try to reduce that.
Yep.
load.
Codium competing with that and wiping it out?
Codium is interacting. I don't think people know exactly. It seems like it's really bad because it anchors up with shells and then it sweeps and prevents the eelgrass from maybe reseeding. So there might be some interaction there that's even beyond eutrophication. But either way, that water body
Wow.
is quite degraded. So,
Especially the nearshore area, the eelgrass beds haven't come back.
Sorry to hear that.
yeah,
Well, we'll do our part.
all right, thank you.
All set?
Mhm.
Jim?
No additional comments.
Wayne?
I'm all set, it's a good plan, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I don't have any additional comments. Do we have anyone here in the room who would like to speak to this? Hearing none, does anyone care to make a motion here?
John, I'll make a motion, but I just have one question before I make the motion. Should I make the motion for both properties since we've been discussing both of them together? Okay. I will move that we approve the notice of intent for 4 Cottage Avenue, map 6, parcel G1-5-2, SE 32-2548, and that we also approve the notice of intent for 5 Cottage Avenue, map 6, parcel G2-1, SE 32-2549, with the conditions that no pesticides or herbicides be used on the properties.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
And fertilizers.
And fertilizers. I'll take that as an amendment to my motion.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for your
6
time.
and 0.
Good night.
Back, you can start.
Okay.
John, I'm going to recuse myself from this one, sir.
Oh, you're recusing yourself.
Mr. Chairman, could we get some noise control? It's loud back at this end of the...
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, Mark, could you just close that door when you... So, the next item on the agenda here is notice of intent for 33 Dunes Road, map 5, parcel W1-5, SE 32-2550 for site improvements, including relocation of a swimming pool, deck removal, and patio reconstruction. Why don't you just hold for a second and let Amy come back? Okay.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Brad Holmes. I'm a professional wetland scientist with Environmental Consulting and Restoration. We're here on behalf of a notice of intent, as you mentioned, at 33 Dunes Road. We did receive a DEP file number. The site itself, which I know you have the plans in front, I'll point to the existing conditions plan. The site contains a single-family home. There's an existing pool, patio, deck, lawn, landscape area, a shell driveway, and other appurtenances that accompany a well-maintained single-family residence. The site contains a coastal dune here, basically right along the the limit of the property, which we've delineated. There's a 50 and 100-foot buffer zone, and we're also partially within the land subject to coastal storm flowage, the FEMA flood zone here that runs across the southern portion of the property. The property abuts a large coastal dune system that leads to Nantucket Sound. What we've proposed is a improvement project, which is noted on this plan, but it's a little bit better detailed on the landscape design plan prepared by Outerland Landscape. Now I'm kind of upside down as far as the image. If it helps, I can flip it up like this. And if we have to get into the plantings, we can do that. Get a flip. But what we're looking to do is to reconstruct the in-ground pool and remove a significant amount of hardscape, remove lawn, remove the deck, and come up with a pretty intense landscape mitigation planting plan, all coastal salt-tolerant species. I'm just flipping it up because it's kind of hard for me to go from existing conditions to the north and then flip you upside down to the south, so fumbling with the plan here. So what we're looking to do is, here's the 100-foot, 50-foot, and you have the coastal dune here. What we're looking to do is take out the existing deck, reconstruct the existing patio that's there now, remove the pool that's here, reconstruct a new in-ground pool that's here, remove a retaining wall and lawn that's here, and then all the lawn and landscape that's there now, which doesn't contain native species, at least not a dominance, would be removing the lawn and then reconstructing these with mitigation planting areas. So at the end of the day, there's a significant reduction in hardscape, structure, landscape areas, and a significant improvement with the amount of native plant species. We did get a chance with Amy Outerland, landscape design coordinated, and we swapped out some of the coastal salt tolerant plants that Amy had suggested, and that is the result of this revised plan, which I dropped 3 copies off with Amy. Robin from Outerland Landscape Design is on virtual tonight if we had any questions for her as far as the design. But that's a brief overview is a sense that it is an improvement project in both ways. Improvements to the property owners for the use of their property, but also an improvement ecologically because we're reducing a significant amount of structure and replacing with native plant species. So with that, I'll bring it back to you, and if you have any questions towards the design, we can connect in with Robin.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Changes to the plan came after your packets were already delivered, so I didn't have them bring in new plans for you. In Dropbox, there is the revision. I have a couple here if anybody would like to peruse them, but they're, all the plants that you had picked were native to the US and mostly to New England, but a lot of them wouldn't do probably that well in this very windy, exposed environment, or wouldn't be naturally found there. So I appreciate you substituting in ones that would be more likely to be found in an area such as this. Does anybody want to see a couple?
Sure.
Okay. As you've said, this is an improvement project, so it's not often that we get a reduction in, I'll pass one more down if Brad's gonna look at one. There's a reduction in hardscape, so they're not required to do any mitigation necessarily. So I wouldn't really, it's not really mitigation, it's just improvement, and.
Right, true, we're flipping it,
Yeah.
but it's really just an enhancement, I guess. We wouldn't be calling it mitigation, it's a
Agreed.
betterment.
Yep, and our requirement, so even though the project is an improvement, we do require any new plants that are installed to be native and appropriate for this specific site. So I really have no nothing else to say. I recommend approval of the project as now presented.
Thank you. Sophia, have you had a chance to look at that? Do you
I have, thank you, yes. It looks good to me. I have no questions.
Okay.
No questions?
No questions, gentlemen.
Nothing from me, no.
Oh, sorry, I do have one question. You said it's about the fence. So right now, there is a chain link fence, and that has shown up on previous plans that the commission has seen. You're proposing to redo it with a wood and metal fence? What do you mean by, what would that look like?
It is on the existing conditions plan as far as removing and replacing
Yeah.
fence. I didn't get tuned into the specific materials. If Robin is available and can provide some more detail, but
I want to make sure it's not like a really stockade, complete barrier,
I'm sure that,
They're not going to want a
yeah,
barrier
the
there?
intent of this property is to
See
enjoy
the ocean?
the dune, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, this is Robin. I did speak to the homeowners. They do have small dogs, so they would like to keep that area contained to some degree, but they do agree that the chain link fence is pretty unsightly. So we're thinking of a wood and wire fence. So it would be wood panels with wire and panels in between.
Okay, so kind of
So it
somewhat
replaces
similar.
what's
to-
existing.
I just wouldn't want us to necessarily see a stockade, something that would completely block
And would create more of a wind hazard too.
right,
Right.
change the movement, because you're at the landward edge of the dune there, so we don't want something that's gonna that block completely the movement, should it want to move.
And that could be a condition if you wanted.
I would
include. I
suggest
would have
that.
no-
Yeah.
We would have no problem with that.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I guess we've had comments. I have no further comments. I guess my suggestion would be, since it's pretty fuzzy what that fence is right now, that if we're going to approve this, that it would be contingent on your approval, like we do with planting sometime, that it's an appropriate fence.
I would condition that the fence cannot alter any movement of coastal dune. More than so than your chain link already does, that it not be, basically that it not be a stockade fence. So we can put that condition on there.
That would be acceptable.
Okay.
I actually do have one quick question, if you don't mind. I didn't notice this before. What are the snowball plants at the top? I don't see those labeled. These two.
That's Kinnikinnick, Aristophalos.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all.
Anything else? No one else in the room? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the notice of intent for 33 Dunes Road, map 5, parcel W1-5, SE 3C-2550, with the condition that the fence be approved and not be a stockade fence.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
That's 5-0 and
5-0, one abstention.
one abstention.
Can I have those plans back, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go get Mark.
Yeah, he's right there.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 74 Depot Road, map 44, parcel P2, SE 32-2551 to raise and replace a single-family dwelling and install a new septic system. Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening. Don Bracken. I'm a professional civil engineer and surveyor with Bracken Engineering, representing the applicants, Doug and Wendy Mills. We were actually here probably maybe 14, 15 years ago. We got a very similar project like this approved. Nothing has happened on the property since then. What we have is an existing property located off of Depot Road, which is much further down. There's a driveway that leads to it. Off of the property, we have a bordering vegetated wetland that's associated with a small pond further to the west. Here we have the 50-foot buffer zone, which is entirely off of the property boundaries. Highlighted in red is the 100-foot buffer zone from the BVW. Existing on the property right now is a dilapidated single-family dwelling in this location. As you can see, about a third of that existing dwelling is within the buffer zone. The septic system for that buffer zone consists of a septic tank and leaching pit. The leaching pit is way over here to the northwest corner. As you can see, it's within the 100-foot buffer zone. The plan is to demolish, not much left to demolish, but more so remove the existing structure that's there, construct a new single-family dwelling completely outside the buffer zone, except for a small corner of the bulkhead that's going to be on this side of the structure. The septic system will obviously be a new Title V septic system. We've been able to keep all the components outside the 100-foot buffer, including the entire soil absorption system in the reserve area. The blue line indicates the limit of work. As you can see, it extends around the existing leaching pit, which has to be pumped and filled with sand. It's pretty close to what the limit of work would be required anyway in order to construct the dwelling. So you can see these two areas here where we're doing work within the 100-foot buffer. The topography slopes from the back of the house down toward the wetland, but in the area of the proposed house and the septic system, it's fairly level. So there's really not much proposed grading for construction. Most of the activity, as I said, is all outside the 100-foot buffer zone. We will be bringing town water down. There's a well on site now, but again, both of those items are outside the 100-foot buffer. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Amy?
From a conservation perspective, it's an improvement over existing. You have a dilapidated, uninhabitable dwelling there right now. There's something that's actually encroaching on town property on the southern property line, I believe. Yep.
Yeah, in this corner right here, there's like a shed or something
Yeah,
attached to
so
it.
that will all be removed, and right now there is a septic system, even though it's not being used, there is a septic system within the 100-foot buffer, and everything's gonna be upgraded and moved outside of it. Your limit of work, at the tight site, been down there a couple times, and it is a tight site, so, I recommend approval of the project with our typical conditions in regards to future use, the lawn maintenance or anything else that's gonna be used, and anything really beyond the limit of work would need approval going forward if the owners wanted to do anything further. But from our perspective, I mean, you're taking something that's in jurisdictional area and removing it from it. So I would recommend approval of the project.
Thank you, Amy. Wayne?
Only thing I have is I see the existing leaching pit is to be pumped and backfilled with clean sand. I would prefer it to be pumped and dug out, the blocks and whatever sludge is in the ground, and then fill it in with clean sand.
We could do that, but usually that results in more disturbance.
It shouldn't. If you got an excavator there, you dig it out and put it in a truck.
Yeah, to dig out the whole pit, it would be a bigger excavation than just
Yeah,
uncovering
but you've got a lot of sludge and stuff in the bottom of that thing. It's just sitting there, probably right in the water down in that country.
The water table's pretty deep, and I don't think that place has been used in 30 years, so I don't see it as much of a threat. I honestly feel it's a lot less disturbance in that buffer if we put a note to pump it in case there is anything in there, but I'd bet anything it's dry. And we just feel the least amount of disturbance would be just to fill it in with sand, fill a cavity, and leave it in place.
How long has it been abandoned?
If I had to guess, I mean, we were back here 15 years ago, and it looked like it was definitely abandoned then. My guess would be 5 or 10 years beyond that, so it's been 20
That's probably
years.
dried up.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Anything else? All set, Jim?
No questions.
Brad?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the edge of the clearing and the work limit. One of my concerns with these types of projects is that over time, the lawn just migrates towards the resource area. And it doesn't mean it has to happen, but it is something that happens. So is there what do you envision that edge of work looking like?
In this case, it's right at the top of the slope, so I can't imagine, I agree with you, we see it all the time, but where the slope goes down,
It's pretty
you know, they would have to fill to actually make anything useful if they're gonna expand the lawn, and that would, you know, that would.
Are there trees set there, or
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
wooded.
there's trees,
Yeah.
and it's pretty steep.
Yeah, I know sometimes where we have a site that's really prone to that type of encroachment, we often look to have a living fence or something there. What do you think, Amy, about this location?
So I think if you were to put a living fence along the limit of work line, it would, I mean, they're already pulling things back. So you can see where the property line is, it may be something to fill in a little bit more along the property line, which is between the 50 and, it's close to about 80 feet, actually, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe something in there. I mean, they still need permission, anything within the 100, but to have a living fence right almost at the 100 in some locations, I think that would be more restrictive than we've
I agree.
required.
I would agree, either the work limit or not.
Yeah,
You know,
so,
it's-
I mean, like I said, maybe they could beef up a little bit right along the property line, because that's between the 50 and 100.
It is pretty wooded, and there's an
Yeah.
overstory, so I'm not sure what would even grow
Yeah.
underneath that overstory.
Well, maybe we can
Yeah.
just put a condition in that just makes it very clear
That's
that
what I was
there
planning
should
on
be no
doing.
encroachment beyond the work limit.
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
Sophia?
I have nothing either.
So, just following up on the previous discussion, it's a little unclear to me, just on this drawing where, I mean, we came in on the north side of the existing house when we went and visited. And where is that, I don't know what it is, dirt road, right of way on this?
I just blew up the section of the plan, but if you go to the full plan that we submitted, it's pretty long. As you can see, there's a match line here, but it's a long
I've
dirt
got
road
this
that comes all the way down.
turn
It is, I admit, it is confusing. I
I
don't know if you've been out there lately, but we did just,
out there yesterday.
yeah, we
so-
just had that path cleared,
So-
and we staked out the lot line, and we staked out the easement before
I
they
got it.
cleared
I
the
have-
path, yeah.
Okay, all right, I don't have anything further. Anyone else, anyone in the room care to speak? Yes?
My name's Michael Payne, and I live at 62 Depot Road, which abuts the property. I've lived there since June 2016. It's good to see this building come down. It's an eyesore, it's a public nuisance. The police have been called there several times. Teenagers have to have a place to drink beer. I just prefer it not be next to my place. So this will be an improvement, I'm sure. Some of my questions about this, particularly the existing septic system, have been answered already. But I do have some concerns, and if this is not the appropriate venue, I'm sorry, but it's my first time. So there's a very long driveway from Depot Road up to this property. Would you mind if I could angle this so I could look at the? Thanks very much, Mr. Brown. There is a very long driveway from Depot Road. And what kind of machinery is going to be going up there to demo the house and for the actual construction? I mean, it's an old 1940s unpaved driveway. And so my concern is that having lived there for a while, I've got great horned owls living there. I've got screech owls. It's a pathway for deer and fox and coyotes. I'm not trying to do a spotted owl number on this by any means, but it's just a concern. The other thing is that there's a very hilly area at the corner of the lot. It's not flat. And do you propose to, modify the landscaping there, so grade it down flat, or just leave it as is?
Yeah, I think you're talking this area. There is there is a hill there. We are planning on flattening that out.
Okay. And I know Oker's Pond is not the paradise of Harwich. You won't see it on, any brochures. It's basically an old abandoned cranberry bog. And my property, the owners, way back in the time, if you use a title search, they used to own that, and they used to, when it was a cranberry bog, they used to do it. So is that going to affect, runoff into the area or anything like that? It's not my land. I think people have the right to use their land in all lawful ways, but it's just a concern that I have. And so I'm just raising that.
Thank you.
Other than that, I would like to mention, and I'll go, is the last time I ran teenagers off the property, I noticed there was a wild bee nest living within the walls. And before you take a bulldozer to the place, there are a number of apiary rescue services on the Cape.
Yep.
I haven't been there for a couple of years. They may be dead. I don't know. And it's winter. But I don't know when you're going to start. But it's something, we need all the bees we can keep. Beyond that, those are my questions, and I'd appreciate any comments, if whatever.
I can't speak to the machinery, you could, but the driveway itself and then the grading is not within our jurisdiction. So as long as they're not doing anything outside of jurisdiction that's gonna have an adverse impact all the way to the bordering vegetated wetland down below, we don't have really jurisdiction over that. But as far as machinery, Mr. Bracken, you can probably answer.
Yes, that driveway will have to be improved, obviously, to get the machinery that's going to be required to go in there. It's a 15-foot and a 20-foot right-of-way, from 15 to 20. Right now, you can drive down there, but it's basically just a path. So if there was a house there, it would be usable for the equipment. There will have to be some improvements to the driveway. And the water line's got to go down that road as well, so I imagine they're going to widen what's there, within that 15 feet. Generally, you need, at least 10, preferably 12 feet to get the machinery in and out.
Never done this before. I live on Martha's Lane.
Can you identify yourself,
Oh,
please?
Diane Pereira. I live on Martha's Lane, and my backyard abuts the long driveway, right-of-way. I noticed it was staked out. How much of that's going to be dug up and trees gone? That was one of my concerns. The size of the house. I know it says single family, but how big a house? I mean, it is just a little shack back there now, so that worries me. And, you know, the loss of, you know, the woods, and I wasn't sure where it was gonna be sitting on the lot.
Just to be clear, we don't have any jurisdiction outside of the 100-foot buffer to the wetlands. And maybe you could just point that out to her so she sees, I mean, you can express your concerns, but we can't spend a lot of time talking about what's going on outside of the areas that are jurisdictional for the Conservation Commission, which is most of the lot and most, maybe all of the new structure. So,
And you're welcome to take a copy. I have extra copies of the plan, or Mr. Bracken can briefly go over it.
I would be happy to go over it after this meeting in the hallway with the neighbors.
I think that's probably the best.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've noted your concerns.
Mhm.
That's about all we can
Okay.
do at this point.
You only have
Thank you.
jurisdiction over a very small portion of this, so.
Okay.
Anything further? Okay, anyone care to make a motion?
Sure, I'll move that we approve the notice of intent for 74 Depot Road, map 44, parcel P2, SE 32-2551, with the conditions that there be no encroachment beyond the shown limits of work.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor? Aye. That's 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have a notice of intent for 30 Harbor Road, map 15, parcel U 15-A, SE 32-2366. Remanded to Conservation Commission by court, new dock in Witchmere Harbor.
Is this out of the camera's view, or in the camera's view, but out of the way of, remember I had to move it last time.
Yeah, I don't.
Caleb can let you know, once you put
I
it
don't
up.
think there's gonna be anyone over there.
I'm sorry?
I don't think you're gonna be blocking anybody.
No.
So is this okay for everyone?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, for the record, I'm Mark Burgess of Shorefront Consulting. Mr. Novak and his wife are here tonight. And I'm going to try to be brief. There's a long history with this project, and it was first filed in 2018. And it's been in front of this board and Waterways several times, modifying and changing the designs and just going general back and forth. In 2019 was the last filing, and that's the one that we're dealing with tonight. And the town was kind enough to allow us to remand it back to the board. And I submitted a letter that outlines the changes to the drawing from the original design. We held off continuing or going back in front of you for quite a while. And since then, half a dozen water-dependent structures have been approved, several docks have been approved with dredging, and we just sat back and waited and stored all that information. And also, when this was first filed in 2019, there was any mitigation proposed for it at all, with the exception of the standard $6,000 of the Shellfish Mitigation Fund. So in learning and listening to all of that, Amy's worked with us very closely and carefully to update everything to what we now know as the current standards for these kinds of projects. So I submitted this letter on February 2nd with the plan revision. It was noted the Waterways Committee had approved, this is affectionately referred to as design number 7. There are 9 designs in total, but everybody has seemed to latch on to 7, so we're staying with that, and that's the one that the DEP approved as well. So the changes to the design that were suggested by Amy was to raise the dock up so that the newly required 1.5 to 1 ratio is offered over any vegetation, regardless of what it is. And since the dock was first brought before you, there was marsh under the dock, but there isn't anymore. And if you've been out there with any frequency, for some reason, this site just gets all the trash from Richmond Harbor. Pilings wash up, bottles wash up. I mean, every time I go there, there's glass and everything else. It's amazing, but it just seems to get trashed, literally. So there's no marsh under there now. There's some other vegetation, but there's no marsh under the dock. There is the marsh on the north and south side, so that was redelineated and updated. The other thing I did was we lengthened the ramp from 18 to 20 feet. This is because the dock went up a little higher, and I like to maintain as least of an angle as possible when you walk down at low tide, so it's not dangerous. But in doing so, we shortened the dock by 2 feet. So the float stays where it was, but we pulled the dock back 2 more feet and lengthened the ramp, which keeps the angle where I'd like to see it. The dock width was clarified. It was always 3.5 feet. And the 2 outer piles were changed to 10 feet, and the bracketing system was updated based on a recent project in Oyster Creek. They just came up with a great idea, so I incorporated it into this design. The storage bench was deleted, so the dock is less than 4 feet wide the whole width. And then shellfish mitigation in the form of direct seeding, 1,745 square feet is offered. I do want to be clear that this is in addition to the standard $6,000 contribution to the shellfish fund. So what the Novaks are offering is to pay a qualified person to buy.
We're already to the Novak.
Excuse me, whoever's online and talking, can you please mute until you're called on by the chair? Go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to be clear that this mitigation in the seeding, it directly seeds the dredge area, and it would be a qualified person to come in and buy the seed from like ARC or the town maybe, however, that they purchase the seed and directly reseed the area right after everything's been dredged. And that's important to me because generally when we do dredging, we will assume that the area will rejuvenate naturally within a year. That's under the bylaw or the regulation standards. And in this case, we're saying we're going to restore it right away. So no other project before you has offered direct seeding. Now, and then I did various drafting corrections and things like that, just minor edits. Every time you look at a plan, you can find something to correct. So I'll get back to the mitigation in a minute. So we also submitted a planting plan by Blue Flax Design. Teresa is online with that plan. If you have any questions, she's available online to answer them. It's a pretty sufficient plan. It incorporates 3,770 square feet of plantings on the coastal ground. And they also submitted, Blue Flax also submitted a planting protocol, the land management plan. And this plan was developed for the plantings on the bank. And let's see, what else? And then I submitted a sketch plan showing where we're providing 2 areas of direct marsh, new marsh planting. This is on the north and the south side. 320 square feet of new marsh plantings are offered. So 160 north and 160 south, I believe. So with that, So, yeah, Waterways approved a design on October of 2020. The minutes are in there for that. The harbor master reviewed the minor design changes that we made to the dock, and he had no problem with them, and I think there's an email that says that he felt it was fine. It didn't have to go back to Waterways because the actual, like, footprint, there wasn't enough changes to warrant going back to Waterways, so we're all set with them. Okay, so the mitigation, I went through a lot of detail with the mitigation. We've got this plan that you have, the 8.5 by 11, on the page 2, outlines the mitigation requirements based on the square footage of the dock. The 542 square feet, so 2,168 square feet of mitigation would be proposed at 4-to-1 for the entire structure. The mitigation plantings all by themselves are 4,090 square feet. And then if you add the direct seeding mitigation of 1,744, you're at a total of 5,500 square feet. That's a 10.7-to-1 ratio. So there's lots of mitigation. All of the mitigation is directly in the resource area where there might be impacts, between coastal bank, the beach area at the bottom, salt marsh, and land under ocean. I think, well, as you can see, the numbers are extensive, the mitigation's extensive. So we believe that the project as updated is consistent with other projects that have recently been passed, and we would like to have your support tonight.
Okay, thank you. All set?
I believe so.
Amy?
First, I want to apologize for the error on our end in terms of saying that you didn't have a permit for the pruning of some trees on the property. They did have a permit for pruning of some trees from my department for egress, essentially around the house on the north side. It was a bit more extreme than we had envisioned it being, but you did have a permit for pruning on that side. The contractor did not alert us that, like he was supposed to do, that it was getting done, and again, it was our error, so I apologize for that. The commission can, any mention of that in my summary, please disregard, because it was our error about that. What was I going to say? So quickly, the commission denied the project under the Acton bylaw in 2019. DEP issued a superseding order approving the project. The commission appealed that decision. This matter is stayed pending this remand. The applicant refiled under the bylaw only in late 2020, and ultimately the applicant decided to withdraw that NOI. So you're looking at the original application that came in 2018, 2019. So there were improvements since that time. As Mr. Burgess said, the height of the dock was raised so that it's 1.5 feet above, or 1.5 times the height by the width, higher dock. As proposed, it would go 51 feet beyond mean high water. They would dredge 99 cubic yards of material to gain a depth of 3 feet at that length. When they filed this application, we hadn't changed our bylaw to be 3 feet. It was still at 2.5, but they're trying, since they would have to dredge to meet 2.5 anyways, we want to meet the 3 foot that we now require. They went back to Waterways, and Waterways and the Harbor Master were adamant that this dock cannot go farther out into the harbor without having severe impact to navigation, which is why you'd think, oh, it's 51 feet, they can go out farther. They really can't. Shellfish surveys did find a variety of shellfish types in the proposed project location, and the material in the dredge footprint is decent enough to support them. This project would have an adverse impact, at least temporarily, on land containing shellfish. in the dredge footprint. However, they are direct seeding and they're not changing the substrate, so I can see the argument there as well. In addition to direct seeding of the footprint, they're also offering 3 years' worth of seeding in the Witchmere Harbor area. When the project was initially filed, there was a very, very thin strip of salt marsh that connected to slightly larger strips of salt marsh on either side. Since that time, it's been probably 2-3 years now since that's been gone, but that is gone, and that is where the dock would span. So technically, it's not immediately over any salt marsh. It's adjacent to, it's very close, but it's not over any salt marsh. They are proposing to add 320 square feet of new salt marsh. I would just maybe rethink how you're going to anchor those pillows. If this area accumulates ice and debris, the 1-inch oak stakes may not be sufficient for that, but that's a minor edit that can be considered should this get approved. We've seen a lot of helical screws, and as opposed to pillows, some people are adding fiber rolls and then filling with compatible material behind them to build the marsh back up, but that's a small problem in comparison to the rest of the project, so we can always work that out. The planting would greatly, on the bank, would greatly improve the stability and the habitat value of that bank. We had a brief discussion yesterday about why that's been historically mown, and aware that should not be happening. Chances are what's in there when you look at the immediate adjacent properties is it's a mishmash of a lot of invasive species. But there's been a history of pruning there, which after I finish speaking, I'm more than happy if the commission wants to hear from the applicant about that, then I'll turn it over to you. So the planting that's proposed, it's a very well thought out plan for this area. I think it will add a great stability and habitat value to this bank. I'm not sure I consider it, perfect mitigation because it's an area that has been historically disturbed. But I do think it does bring a lot of value regardless to this. So I do think trying to regrow marsh, we'll have to see how it goes there because it's such a dynamic area and because your salt marsh that is there is having kind of a hard time. So it'll be something that I think you should try, and we can study it and evaluate it and see how it goes. Let's see. So as my job as administrator is to try to advise you the best I can under the act and the bylaw. With this project, I've watched the progression of this project. I've been here the whole time of the project. And it is my sense, my recommendation to you is that I would recommend approval of the project. I'm not very confident that since the project has already been approved by DEP, that we would be successful in getting an amended superseding order on this. And I would much rather condition the project heavily and have a real stake in evaluating how this project goes, rather than it just going between you and DEP. I'd much rather that happen. So I think that is my recommendation to you.
Thank you. Amy invited you to respond to what she had to say about the disturbance of the bank, I think is the way to summarize that. Do you care to comment, or shall we proceed otherwise?
Historically, this neighborhood, and this is in the 1940s, had a parade and a cannon shoot with starting cannons for yacht starting races. And my neighbor, Mr. Van Buren, had historically hosted this event. It lasted from 6 to 6:20. we'd get, the police chief would give us a permit to do it. We sought the permit. Up until 2 years ago, he said we didn't need to do it anymore. So we've had this for probably 20 years, where we host this cannon shoot. And the cannon shoot is essentially, we shoot for 20 minutes. In the absence of fireworks in the 1940 and 50s, this was what the neighbors did. And we fired at Lucy's house. She'd fire back. We'd do this for 20 minutes. Everybody would have a drink and go home. And so we were very worried about having some kind of a wad in one of these blank shells, which had happened, starting something down on the bank. And so we would trim the bank so that it would avoid any kind of fire hazard. We'd had hoses out and fire extinguishers. And that's what we did. And we didn't think at that time, we've been there for 25 years. At that time, we had no idea about what the regulations were about pruning. That's the story.
Okay. Thank you. So, comments, questions from commissioners. Wayne?
I don't have anything.
Jim?
I don't have anything.
I've got a whole lot,
Go for it.
as you can imagine. So what made this one difficult and challenging to permit before, because there was multiple places where it didn't meet our regulations. And so right up front, I have a question on the setback. It doesn't seem to meet the setback, and so I don't see a variance request here.
The there is. The
Yeah, the
original
original-
filing did, so that it's still the same filing, it's not a new application.
Right.
This is still the old application, so they are asking for roughly a 10-foot variance request
On one side.
on one side because
Right.
you're supposed to have 65 feet between adjacent structures, and on one side they have 55.
Right.
It's more for navigation, we believe, so,
I disagree with that.
I understand.
Very much.
But yes, that was part of the initial application, and everything involved in that initial application carries forth here with the exception of the changes that have been made here.
So I hope everyone read the denial letter from 2019. There was a lot in there. And so it needed a variance for setback. It needed a variance for siting and shellfish habitat. It needed a variance for 2.5 feet at mean low water. So it didn't pass. It was a really difficult project. It was a challenging project. Everybody understood your interest to have a dock there. We would feel the same way. But to me, it was a tremendous hurdle to try to pass this project, given those resources. What makes it really difficult for me is that it's the first time that I've seen a project where to meet your mean low water depth, you have to dredge viable and substantial shellfish habitat. This is not the so-called hypoxic sediment. This is really substantial shellfish habitat. So, we have one provision that says you can't site a structure in shellfish habitat. And here we have really good shellfish habitat. And then number two, it says you cannot site a structure unless you have this water depth. Prior to our wetlands change in 2021, that was a variance requirement. If you wanted to go below 2.5 feet, you needed a variance. With the new language, I don't know how this happened, but it turned out to be silent on that. And so now we're seeing people come and say, okay, we want to dredge that. The intention to me is to protect that substrate. And so to dredge viable habitat, to do that, that's the same as a variance to me. It may not be technically a variance, but to me, it's three variances. And so I just don't think I can support this project. That float, what happens in floats in Witchmere Harbor is scouring occurs from the boat and the float, and the footprint under that becomes really poor shellfish habitat. So that will not recover. So the whole idea is that you can have temporary impacts. You can have variances if you have temporary impacts. That will not be a temporary impact. And I've long felt that mitigation is a poor substitute for protecting habitat. I think trading seed for habitat, to me, is a profoundly poor management approach. I've disagreed with it all along. And so you've done a great job with putting together mitigation. You've done well. I don't know where the salt marsh went, but that problem is no longer there. So, for me, you've got 3 different strikes here that I don't think this commission should have approved this project. I don't know how you can say it's okay to have 3 things that you overlook in a structure. So that's why this was difficult in 2018, it was difficult in 2019. It's no different now, other than the fact that it has less or no salt marsh impacts. So, you know, I spent a lot of time looking at this. I'm looking at regulations of other towns, and folks, you know, people are acknowledging these are structures in a resource area. You know, we're not talking about structures that don't have impacts to natural resources. They're in the resource area. We don't allow any other activity except for water-dependent structures to do this. And so I don't think we should take it lightly, giving variances for that. So I can't support this project.
I have no questions.
Sophia?
Amy, when you are talking about conditioning the approval, can you tell me a little bit more what that might?
Sure. Conditioning, so a lot of times when we condition projects, which you'll actually see, and it would look fairly similar probably to the order of conditions that I have on your table tonight for 9 and 11 Herring Run, in terms of pretty significant monitoring of and doing shellfish surveys as well, but also monitoring the mitigation plantings, the viability of the salt marsh, things like that. That's redone. So those are things that DEP would likely not condition. They would traditionally approve a plan as is with the notes that are on that plan. So any additional monitoring and study of the site to see how it's reacting, and then if things are negatively occurring, there's really no way for us to respond to that. So without going through each individual one,
Yeah.
hopefully that answers your question.
It does, thank you. So, since DEP's already approved this, if we vote to deny it, it probably still happens, no?
That would be I can't say for certain. So again, DEP has approved it, we appealed it. So our appeal is still out there, but it's stayed because this was remanded back to the commission for further consideration because of some modifications made. So we have appealed it. That appeal under the act is still outstanding. The bylaw appeal, did you file an original bylaw appeal? I can't remember back in the day, because you have to do that within 90 days or something. So I don't know if that's either outstanding or it wasn't done. I would assume you did. But, so that's also stayed. So there is a chance, it can happen, that DEP can change their minds. So what happens, just to explain, if I may, real quick for the commission on the process. We deny a project. A DEP reviewer came out to the site several years ago after we denied it with the department, the applicant, and their representative, and I presented the commission's denial as written, and they presented their case. The reviewer went back to their office after reviewing the site and reviewing testimony and made a decision to supersede or approve the project. So we have appealed that, but that is currently stayed in the courts pending the outcome of this. My experience is it is unlikely that, so the next round would be in front of a DEP judge up in Lakeville. And it's my experience over the time that I've been doing this that they tend not to waver from what their reviewers do.
And is the planting plan part, is it new or old, or did it happen before or after, or is it all part of? It's new, okay, all right.
If I may, then, go ahead.
You, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Amy, just to clarify in my mind where this stands in the process. So, we denied it, it went to DEP, DEP approved it.
Right.
We appealed
Appealed it.
that approval. It has been sent back to us because there have been changes to the plan since we denied it. Is that
And the
correct?
commission agreed, I don't know, months ago during executive session to allow the remand.
To allow the remand, okay.
Correct.
Now, the changes to the plan, from what I'm hearing, in at least your opinion, does improve the project?
It's an improvement.
It's an improvement. So basically, we now have an approved project from what was approved by DEP,
Correct.
sitting in front of us, and our appeal of the original project has been stayed based on those approvals to the project and having it sent back to us for further consideration.
Right, so if the commission denies this project, they already have the approval from DEP. DEP could move forward on their original approval without any of the additional aspects that have been presented here.
Okay, that's very helpful for me to
Yep.
understand. Thank you, Amy.
So
That makes sense.
I just want to see if Sophia is done, I mean, before.
Thank you, Jim took it where I was headed, so thanks
Thank
for
you.
doing the legwork for me. I just
Okay,
wanted,
thank
yeah, I was interested in the planting plan, so
Okay.
as usual.
Brad?
I feel like we're missing a description on what happens if we deny in terms of the wetlands bylaws.
Sure.
I don't
I
hear that.
can-
And-
yep.
Yeah, and
I
I know
was-
I know what it is, but that, I
Right.
think it's important that you tell the folks.
Of course. So the bylaw appeal has been stayed as well. That is separate, and we have different rules and regulations under the bylaw. So that would continue on should you deny the project, and the appeal would go forward to Superior Court under the bylaw, where we have stricter regulations than the Wetlands Protection Act does in certain aspects of this project. So that would continue. And that could be, sometimes a judge will look upon what DEP says, and sometimes they won't. But they are distinctive sets of regulations, the act and the bylaw.
Okay, so,
You need both, and I should say, you need approvals under both in order to move forward on a project.
so the denial order of conditions gives a very detailed, lengthy argument about why it was denied,
Correct.
both under the act and under the bylaw. And so, one of my questions about all of this, one of the things that to me makes this situation problematic, is I have not seen any information where DEP rebuts any of those points. Like, what is it in that argument did they find objectionable, or why would they reject all of those points?
They
We don't know.
they don't say.
Well,
They
so
issue a
it's-
supersede, then they never do.
Yeah.
They issue a superseding order and say, we approve it, here are the conditions. They don't rebut. I've never, which, it's not right, I don't think it's right that we don't get any feedback, but we don't get it.
Well, at some point, well, then there's a question of process here. If we deny, if we were to vote to once again deny here, we're ending up in court at some point. And then, do all those things have to go on the table and a discussion about what was wrong with the points that were made in the original denial order of conditions? Is there a judge who's gonna listen to those arguments and say yay or nay on them? Or is it possible that DEP once they're confronted with actually having to explain why they superseded all those points, that they might back off? Or are we never gonna get there?
I don't know. So I have an idea, but I don't want to say things that I'm not positive on. So what if this does not go forward, then we go forward with the DEP appeal process, which everything from day one of filing this permit back in 2018, 2019 is on table for discussion, up through the discussion here.
Jim?
Okay, your recent comment, Amy, was very helpful, and it answered one of my questions. But just let me ask you a question to sort of clarify a little bit further.
Sure.
So if we do nothing, our appeal of DEP's superseding order continues.
Correct.
And that appeal of the superseding order goes to the original project as opposed to the revised project that is being presented to us tonight.
It's all part of the file now, because it's.
Well, I guess my question goes to, if our appeal does not prevail, do they go back to the original project, or do they go back to the project as revised by the presentation of the agreement today?
That I do not know without asking our counsel.
Okay, fine. I don't think any of us know.
Case by case.
Yeah, I'm just not positive.
That's my experience.
So-
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, if I can
Amy, this
paraphrase-
is Glenn Wood.
Oh.
Could I speak to that?
Yes, please, Mr. Wood?
Hi, Glenn Wood, for the applicant. The revised plan that's in front of you would definitively be, if there were a denial, which surely we hope there isn't, the revised plan that's in front of you presently would be the one that DEP would be reviewed by an administrative law judge. So based on the significant additional mitigation that's been done, I mean, not to be too frank about this, but I think it's 100% certainty that an adjudicatory judge would approve the project on appeal. It's extremely rare that adjudicatory judges overturn a DEP SOC. So that's a process. I'd also point out that the denial that happened some years ago, which Amy drafted, our position is based on the revisions, the significant mitigation that we've done, the raising of the height of it, the increased depth. We've addressed all of the issues that were raised in the denial. The variances that we need, I'll just point out, are only two. There's not three. There's only two. Project and lands containing shellfish, which this commission has granted and every other dock approval in the past 3, 4, 5 years. So that variance has been granted by this commission, has never been not granted on any project. Secondly, the only other last dock that's just been permitted in the past 2 years, the Eben project at the exact opposite northwest corner, that received, because it needed to, a variance from this commission from the side setback, of which we only needed on one side presently. So the variances that are requested have, in terms of land containing shellfish, have been granted by this commission on every recent project. I think that's a significant note. So it's not like this is a unique filing or a unique request for that variance at all. And further, on the other variance, this commission granted it on Eben, which was the second to last property that got a dock. This is the last and only property on the entire harbor that does not have a dock. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments or discussion?
I'll make some points if no one else wants to. I feel like I've been talking a lot, but to follow up Mr. Wood's comments, I would say it's probably 15 out of 15 shellfish habitat variances in the last approximately 15 years. So this commission continually gives that variance. To me, it's very disappointing. Doesn't matter what the shellfish survey says. High densities of clams, we continue to give that variance. To me, variances should be really uncommon. The language I see is rare, unusual circumstances, hardship, and we keep giving out variances. So I'm really disappointed with that. I don't think we're doing our job. I feel we have one hand tied behind our backs with these projects. I just don't think we get the information we need, and I don't think we're really doing the diligence we should be doing to evaluate these projects. This one is tough. It's the last site available in Witchmere. Who wouldn't want to dock there? I don't think it meets the language of our wetland protection bylaws at all in 3 cases. So 2 are obvious variances. 1 is a variance by nature. So I just think it's a difficult project, and I think the denial language from before in 2019 is very clear. There's a lot of onus put on the project to demonstrate that there won't be prolonged impacts, and that hasn't been done. And again, we're hearing the 2 different pathways. Sure, DEP never rolls back. That's just the way it goes, and I don't even know why. I've been watching it for a long, long time. There's still a separate process under the wetlands bylaws. A denial will bring that back to that process. So it's not just one avenue. Thank you.
If I may, just quickly, I think what Mr. Atkinson was trying to say was that if DEP approved this project in 2019 without any mitigation, without the upgraded standards that we've applied to it now, that it most certainly would approve it now and would be very difficult to go backwards. If I'm paraphrasing correctly?
No, that wasn't what I was trying to raise. What I was trying to raise, and it was more of a question than a comment, was that if we took no action tonight.
Oh, yes.
And the appeal continued, but was not granted by the court, would DEP then go back to the original application, or would it take a look at adding the revisions that you presented to us this evening? And, it sounds like that, it's not clear how that would, play out.
Yeah, I have to defer to Glenn on that one.
Yeah, this is all part of the case now,
It would all be
so
part of the
I think
litigation.
it is all fair game now. This is all part of litigation. We're just back in open session about it because of the remand.
Right.
Yeah, we did this not, maybe a year or so ago, with the elevated walkway project. We remanded back, and we listened to the concerns based on how the denial was written. We made some changes, and the remand went right through. The project got approved in one hearing in like record time. And that's the process that we followed here, is looking at the denial, looking at the history of where things have gone since this project, and incorporated all of that into it now for what you see before you.
Okay, so you're suggesting a choice that hadn't occurred to me, which is do nothing.
Yes, that was the question I was asking. What happened if we do nothing?
So to do anything, somebody has to make a motion, one way or another. I think we're at that point.
Okay.
We can't do nothing, can we? The judge remanded this back to us. I don't believe we can do nothing.
I don't know
Not an
whether that's, what's that, Amy?
I said I'm not an attorney. Maybe Glenn has a little bit more insight about
Well, yeah,
whether
but
action
He's got a point of view, so.
has to be taken, but I'm not Amy Questle, so.
Well, Glenn Wood again, yes, I believe you do and have to take action, and our position is that similar to the project that Mark just pointed out, where we listened to the commission's concerns, we saw how things were going, we made revisions, the commission approved that project. This is similar, so we're hoping that the commission approves the project this evening under the act and the bylaw, and we'd be done with it. If the commission takes no action, then it would go back to DEP and go back to court. If the commission didn't, taking no action would be the same as a denial. But surely, our hope is that the commission will vote to approve the project and close the hearing and vote to approve the project this evening. Thank you.
I think if the court throw it back in our lap, we have to act on it. We should anyway, you don't have to, but we should.
I would agree with that.
Okay. I'll entertain, anybody can make a motion. I'm not gonna make a motion about this. If someone cares to make a motion, we'll consider the motion and vote on it.
Yeah, I think, I'm kind of at a loss as to how to make a motion, so if somebody
Okay.
else on the commission is prepared to make a motion.
I'll make a motion, and that motion would be to deny under the Wetlands Protection Act due to impacts to shellfish habitat. Actually, Amy, can we paraphrase the previous denial, or do we have to spell it out? Probably have to spell it out.
I don't know. You have to say what you're impacting, like shellfish.
Yeah. Okay.
Land containing shellfish.
Under the Wetlands Protection Act, land containing shellfish, and then under the wetlands bylaws, both the provision to have no new structures in a shellfish habitat, not meeting the 65-foot setback, and also not meeting the 6-foot depth at mean low water.
3 foot.
3 foot, sorry. And I think if we advance the discussion, I can consider if we're going to amend that with any other pieces.
Do we have a second? I'm gonna second the motion. Discussion. Motion made and seconded. Discussion.
I think a big difference from the last denial was the shellfish impacts are off the table.
Salt marsh.
Salt marsh, yeah. I just wanted-
Anything further? All those in favor?
Aye.
So that's, all those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
4-2.
4-2.
So
Okay,
it-
that motion failed.
Motion failed, a new motion has to be made.
Okay. I'll make a new motion that we approve the notice of intent for 30 Harbor Road, map 15, parcel U15-A, SE 32-2366.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion.
Can we condition that, how Amy had recommended?
Okay, my question on that, Sophia, is whether that would be in the motion or in the order of conditions that Amy would draft in response to the motion. So, Amy, what?
So I can, if you want, I can quickly go through what those conditions would be, because what I don't want either is if you move to approve and then the conditions are not something amenable and you end up doing that. So
Okay.
the conditions are very,
Excuse me, before, I would accept those conditions as an amendment, so if you could read them and we'll take that as an
sure.
amendment to my
So
motion.
it could be included but not limited to, because I'm just going off the cuff here.
Sure, go right ahead.
What we've typically required for new docks recently are conditions in regards to routine shellfish surveys after the project has been done. Usually, let's see, for one that we're considering after this for conditions, the shellfish survey can be completed each year for 3 years immediately following installation of the dock. During the summer months, a report of the findings shall be submitted to the commission. Then monitoring report about the plantings annually. The other one had, so the report would also, we'd also need a report detailing the status of the salt marsh restoration. That would kind of be included in your mitigation, the general planting plan, Sorry, running through this here. Shellfish mitigation, that the area for the direct seeding would be done immediately, the same or next applicable season to be seeded. I mean, if you build the dock in the winter, you're not gonna seed the shellfish in the wintertime. And that you comply with your other shellfish requirements. Post-dredge survey shall be completed with 30 days of dredging, then 1 year after that date, and then 5 years after the initial post-dredge surveys, and that would be provided to the commission. Those are the big ones that I see pertinent for this project, things like that.
Okay, thank you, Amy, and I will accept all those conditions as an amendment to my motion.
And I'll second that amendment.
Is there a standard we would be going to?
So, yes, it's more spelled out, but that's, so what you'd be what that requirement is what everybody who's gotten docks recently is required to do.
Okay, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. So it's 4-2. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. It's been a long, hard road, but
Been a while.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, guys. Do I need to stay for Howard then?
I don't think so. There's no questions.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a certificate of compliance for 7 Nons Road, map 6, partial C1-9, SE 32-2524.
We have inspected the property, and we did receive an as-built plan, which is in your Dropbox. We did find the project to be in compliance. We recommend a certificate of compliance for 7 Nons Road.
Any discussion? Questions? We'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the issuing of a certificate of compliance for 7 Nuns Road, map 6, parcel C1-9, SE 32-2524.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6-0. Next is an order of conditions, or orders of conditions for 9 Herring Run and 11 Herring Run, map 3, parcels X3-2 and X3-3, SE 32-2546, for the construction of a new shared dock with float and dredging.
So, I finished this late today, so I apologize for not having it to you sooner, but it's here. So, please take a minute and review it. I printed it out and put it on your table in front of you. So, this is, it was a complex project, the joint dock proposal with shell bags and a whole lot of other things going on. So please take your time and take a look at it. Let me know if I missed anything.
Maybe the kitchen sink, that's all. There's a lot of stuff there.
So the ones that have to do with monitoring, I took a lot of that language from the Anino project or the other one that was on Mill Point recently, but then there's certain ones that are tailored to this project. I missed something, didn't I?
Can I ask why you spec drip irrigation? Or is
That's
that-
what the standard for if it's not like in lawn area, so if it's in native planting area, just so it doesn't, especially in windy locations, so it stays more pointed at the source.
Gotcha.
Specific for, like native mitigation shrub planting type
Okay.
areas.
So are we all set? People want more time to look at this?
No, I'm all set.
I'm all set.
Okay. We have a motion?
Okay, I will move that we close the public hearing and authorize the issuing of an order of conditions for 9 and 11 Herring Run, map 3, parcel X3-2 and X3-3, SE 32-2546.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 6 and 0. Okay, now we have 3 sets of minutes.
Do we have three?
There were
Two.
3
That's great.
online.
Perfect. So, yeah, a couple, they've been working really hard on them. So, a couple there's one set that's been in there for a little while, and the other ones are newer. So, if you want to take time and review them, or table some to next meeting, you can. But I'd prefer if we just go through them if possible.
I sent some comments
Got
to
them.
Korea, and
Yep.
she said she didn't have time to print them out, but
Nope,
she's-
but they're smallish.
right, they're little things, yeah.
Yep, so we got those. We'll incorporate those.
And that's for the May 5th minutes. I don't,
Mr. Chair, can I make a request to pull the February 7th minutes? I'd like to review the tape. I don't feel that my comments are that well characterized, so I'd like to.
So-
You can hold them.
okay,
Table
Sure.
the 7th.
okay,
That's fine.
all right.
And I just have one comment on the others, that's it.
So go ahead.
Okay, let's see. April 5th, this is the 58 Chase Street,
What
replaced
page are we on?
bulkhead. So page 3,
Okay.
and second paragraph, it says that I would like to see a reduction in impacts on the coastal bank. I think what is probably more reflective of what I said is the existing bulkhead has long been causing significant impacts to the downstream coastal bank. And so I'd like to see that sentence to add that.
Existing bulkhead has
Long been
caused
causing significant impacts to the downstream coastal bank.
significant, yep,
And then I did want to see it reduce the impacts. That bulkhead is just,
yep,
it's just chewing up that bank. It's remarkable.
yep,
And part of the problem is sea level rise. You know, it's,
yep.
but it's really, it's a good example of what a poorly sited structure will do.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got that.
Okay, that's all I had.
So that was changes to April 5th.
So, do you want to make a motion to approve April 5
Sure,
with the noted changes?
sure. I will move that we approve the minutes of our meeting of April 5th, 2023, as revised by comments made at this evening's meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's
5-0.
5 and 0. Now, the January 4th, 2023, any comments on that? Okay,
Okay, I'll move that we approve the minutes of our meeting of January 4th, 2023.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 5 and 0 again.
Okay.
Oh, Amy, are we done with the backlog yet?
We're close.
Okay. Another, how many?
I don't know, but I have a feeling if we were done with the backlog, I'd have cheering from Leisha and Kalia, so.
We haven't heard that
So I
yet.
haven't heard it yet, but again, they're trying.
I don't know, I think Kalia would be sad, because she looks awfully happy when I go into that office. And I've been assuming it's because she's having fun doing minutes.
She actually appears to like listening to them. She says it's kind of like a soap opera at times. And we left her on a cliffhanger the other day with 16 old coach Natalia Wallace.
Oh.
with-
boy.
So she like ran into my office and she's like, "Don't tell me what happened." And
Wow,
anyway, so
reality TV, huh, is that it?
yeah, I mean, we're just. Do you guys watch Parks and Rec? Did you used to watch Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
It's really true.
Oh, yeah.
For town, working in the town.
yeah, for sure.
Okay,
All right, so we have one thing in discussion and possible vote, and then I have just two other things for you real quick. So the CPC signage, I let CPC know your comments about the banner and that you weren't opposed to putting signs there. You were just concerned about the banner getting kind of beaten up by the elements or people, being a fairly large banner. And she said they do have smaller signs that potentially could be mounted on the fence, but we can table this until spring, she said. I would be comfortable, and I think if they can mount a smaller, more rigid sign out there, can we just move to approve that tonight so they don't have to come back in the spring if that's what they do?
I'm good with it.
so I'll just make a comment, which is, this is a new thing for CPC. So it's CPC feeling our way along, trying to figure out what's gonna work, and CPC members are concerned about the same things.
Yep.
How long are these things gonna stay up? Are they gonna stand up to the weather? Are they gonna stand up to,
Yeah.
vandals or whatever? And, so I think part of it is just trying stuff and seeing how it works and keeping an eye on it.
Yep.
So from my point of view, any of these things are fine.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it too, if CPC wants to go for the bigger banner. It's just if it gets beaten up and ragged, then we're gonna take it down.
Yeah,
I don't support the big banner. I think it's a foolish idea.
May I make,
Mhm.
excuse me, John?
please do.
Yeah, the only comment I would like to make is that I've driven by the banner that they have by the corner of 124 and Queen Anne Road.
I know, I have too.
It's half falling over and it looks terrible. It's actually disgraceful, the way it looks. And therefore, I could not
Okay.
vote to approve anything that looked even vaguely like that.
So have a smaller rigid sign that's
A smaller
mounted to the
rigid
fence.
sign or plaque or, yeah, something like that, it's fine.
Okay.
You know, because they provided some money and they have a right
Yep.
to advertise that they provided money, but not in a way that degrades the view of the
area.
property.
Or is there a consensus that a smaller rigid sign would be properly mounted on the fence, or the kiosk would be okay?
Aye.
Can we put a size limit on it?
11 by 7, I don't know, 12 by 18, 11 by 17, I don't know, something
I-
bigger than.
Actually, I think we'd be better off maybe to relate that type of information to them and then have them
Yeah,
come
I'm
back.
happy to look at it too and see what
Come
would
back
fit
and show
there.
us what they're proposing.
Okay. Okay.
So, we don't need a motion here, do we?
No, I don't.
Okay, you're just gonna, you will talk to Kathy?
Yep, I'll see what you guys, what CPC has available, if it'll work for the site and accomplish the visibility that they want, for knowing that CPC funds were allocated to this property.
Yeah, I mean, you know, not to prolong, you know, the discussion on this, but the little wooden sign we have by the library
I know,
would probably be acceptable.
I think so. Right at, it's this big.
Yes.
And you put it right on the post that's, as you walk it to the herring ladder, you would hear it right to that. Everybody will see it.
Yeah.
If you have something like that still. That's an older one. I don't know if they have any more
Well,
of those
so
left.
I think the library did that themselves, and what
Oh.
CPC is trying to do is just come up with a standard that they can request, you know, funded projects
Yeah.
to put up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, Chatham has this, you know, a sign that they use on their projects, and something similar would be.
Was it the roof or a bunch of exterior
The painting, the roof, the pillars, yeah.
Yeah.
Last call for if anybody wants to go to the MACC conference in person on March 2nd. It's a Saturday up in Worcester. It is in person at Holy Cross. I can't go because I may have to be here presenting my budget to the select board on that Saturday. But we're happy, we have the money to pay for you in our line item for education. So it's a great opportunity. You can get a couple of your fundamentals under your belt, or you can take very specific classes. There's got to be 25 classes going on that day that you have to choose from. So if you're interested, let me know by end of day tomorrow, so we can sign you up to go. You guys can carpool or something. So I just want to make sure you know that option's out there. We are going to be hosting with the health department a public and environmental health and wellness day on April 27th. It's a Saturday, over at the 204. And it started because the health department wanted to do a lot of public health information, and different organizations coming to do people's testing on blood pressure, and they're actually going to do, I think, HIV screenings and a whole bunch of other things. But they said, hey, does conservation want to play a role? And I said, no, I can't, because we're doing Tour de Trash that day. And then it just, which is our community cleanup at Hull, just spawned this idea of a public and environmental health and awareness day. It's around Earth Week and Arbor Day. So love to see you folks there, or if you want to volunteer to help, that's cool too.
I'm sorry, what is the date again?
Saturday, April 27th. We've invited a lot of environmental nonprofits as well as organizations in the scientific community. So Brad, if Division of Marine Fisheries would like to have any information, an informational table of any sort, please let me know. We're expecting a pretty big crowd. We're gonna try to appeal to all ages. We have some kid activities going on as well. Food trucks coming. It'll be a big deal. And we're gonna wanna use the potential exposure to better promote native plantings and proper maintenance of property maintenance types of techniques, so. And actually, the following week is a discussion that we're gonna have there as well, with Russ from the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension. He's gonna do a whole presentation about soils, and I've agreed to do some talk about pairing with that with native plantings and things like that. Can we talk real quick about the 3-foot, it's not on the agenda, but I just want clarification about the 3 feet of depth at mean low water. So, Brad, you mentioned this during the meeting, and the 3 feet of depth, and I remember in my copy, my question of that was, shall have 3 feet of depth at mean low water, and I had parentheses with dredging, question mark, which was a question that I had asked of the commission. And the answer that I received was you wanted to stay silent on it and leave it up for interpretation from people. So that's why there's not clarification in there, because it was directive from the commission to not clarify that.
Vote? I just can't.
I'd have to look at it at a meeting, but I'd specifically,
Did I miss a meeting? I mean,
no, I do remember you actually being one of the people who wanted to leave it how it was.
really?
Yep.
Well, it certainly backfired.
So but saying that, if the commission, if any of the commissioners want to open that back up for discussion to change that, then we should talk about it. If it's not working, how you have it, and you want to change it so it's clearer for everybody, we can do that. But I was taking lead from the commission.
I don't know what happened.
Can you put it on the agenda? Let's not just leave this hanging out there.
I wanted to put it out for now, but we can put on a future agenda. Next meeting, we can put on next meeting.
Several Cape Town.
Look,
Sorry.
how does the next meeting look?
Not bad.
Okay, good. What, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, several Cape Towns, it's very explicit. You cannot gain your depth by dredging. It defeats the whole purpose of protecting the substrate. And the exception would be if it's like really, really bad sediment, and maybe that was the feeling for the commission then. I just, the way it's being executed now is a total loophole.
Yeah.
That was a variance for
Yeah.
the whole time I've been on this commission. You had to get a variance to go below if you didn't have 2.5 feet. And now we're just.
I favor being more descriptive about it, like
We're allowing
either with dredging or without dredging. I favor it being very clear.
Yeah. I know that Waterways wanted the dredging to be allowed because they wanted to try to encourage some dredging of really bad sediments in Witchmere Harbor. We had a joint commission meeting in 2019, Waterways and us, and they advocated for the dredging.
Right.
And on the north side of Witchmere Harbor, I did not object, because that is just soup.
Right.
And so that's a case where I didn't object it. In this case today, we're dredging really functional habitat, which I just don't think is even authorized by the language of the Wetlands Protection Act or our bylaws. So it has backfired. So we can talk about it. Probably shouldn't talk about it tonight.
I just wanted to bring it up. We can easily put it on the agenda next time, and I could try to find, it would have come up during probably discussion about the bylaw changes prior to those town meetings. So I can look through those minutes and whatnot for it. It'll give me a little time to do that too. We
Would
can
it
have
be the same
discussion.
process to revise the bylaws?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it'd have to be a town meeting vote.
Right. So if we're
But
gonna
I'd
do-
have to talk with Amy Questle, because if it's only a minor change, like a couple of words, by saying with or without dredging, it's tough because, but it's kind of a big deal, you know, at the same time.
It's a big deal.
So I think it has to go to town meeting. It's not just changing an at to a the or something like that, you know?
The 10 years before I was even on the commission, it was a non-starter if you didn't have
Yep.
your depth.
Yep.
That's why those meanders in Herring River don't have docks until
Yeah.
now. There's a real strong reason for that. But here's another thing, we have a study pending.
Mhm.
Almost makes sense to wait for the results of the study. I think the Board of Selectmen would probably say that. I'd like to revisit shellfish surveys, setbacks.
Yeah.
But I don't think doing it before the surveys, the study's done, makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
But it's up to you if you want to discuss it. I went through half the towns in the Capes looking at their bylaws, and like I said, there's several, it's very explicit. It's like it defeats the purpose.
Yeah, I favor it being explicit one way or another, but again, the
Okay.
directive was different, which is fine.
Yeah,
But-
I can't remember what happened. I mean, those were such big, busy meetings during COVID.
Yep.
Just brain-crushing meetings.
Yep.
Well-
So, anyway, I might dig around a little bit. I'll pencil it in for maybe an update or something like that. We don't have to have a hearing on it. I'd like to get the Bell's Neck done for next meeting. I think the only new hearing we have is the Value Mart has done their application. So, all right.
Well, I heard one thing tonight that kind of saddens me a little bit about how screwed up things are in state government, town government, whatever. We're gonna spend a couple $1 million down there doing that sidewalk and whatnot, and then I don't know how long, but you're gonna tear the road up and put a new culvert in. What the hell? You mean to tell me people can't envision something like that coming up and try to put it together?
DOT is swimming with money nationally to do culverts
Unbelievable.
for fish passage.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of
Yep.
culvert money.
That's what we've been told.
It really would depend on someone high level at DOT saying, bring that in. But the fellow that's here
Yeah.
doesn't want to say that because he doesn't want to jeopardize the
Right.
schedule.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say anything either at the time, because.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I just think it's so stupid.
And the head walls are a mess. There's
Yep, they are.
tremendous erosion occurring right now.
I mean, the good news is they're getting looked at. Bad news is the timing didn't work
Nope.
well together,
I know.
but.
Too bad.
NRCS is a slow process. It's not.
Well, anywho.
Well, they've actually worked really quickly, so essentially, how this came up was the work that got done at Coldbrook. We had NRCS out there to take a look at things. They didn't actually fund that, really. But they were an interested party to see the project, and we were down looking at the culverts. We actually had a failure at one of the culverts at Red River. Some of the stone from the side with all these big tides on the landward side of the culvert failed and piled all up in the middle of the river. So we were there looking at that and talking about culverts in general, and this conversation, these ones came up because what they're finding, Coldbrook was designed for what's there now at Coldbrook, and also the culverts at 28 and Hoyt Road were looked at. But, like, now that we're doing this, like, why don't we look at the whole thing? And so NRCS, when they heard that we stopped at Hoyt Road, they're like, well, why aren't you looking at the whole, why aren't we considering looking at the other two culverts too, if we're truly gonna naturalize things? And I said, yes. But up until, and then they looked at it, and they're like, we'll fund that. We'll put forward for funding for this year, for study and design. So, if it moves, it'll move fast for at least, but we'll see.
Maybe. They have money too. There's a lot of
That's
federal
what
dollars
they pretty
around.
much have told us, because they're looking at the upper reaches of the Herring River, from the dam, essentially at West Reservoir, all the way up. That's on the docket for funding. We already got two funded, the one under 124, where the bike, at the bike path into Long Pond, as well as the Bank Street culvert going up into Grassy Pond. That's being has funding for study. So they pretty much told me, we have a lot of money right now, and Massachusetts is ahead of the game when it comes to going for these federal dollars from the USDA. It's not gonna be like that forever, so if you have stuff done, let's do it now.
So, you mentioned Red River, is it the South
Uncle
Chatham?
Beanie's Road, Uncle Beanie's.
Oh, Uncle Vini's, not the South
Yeah,
Chatham
so when you
Road.
go into Red River Beach from Uncle Beanie's Road, if you're driving in, on the right side of that culvert, if you look down, there's a pile of stone from the wing walls of those culverts, that when we had that big December storm, the water got in, and then as it went out, it was so much water through such a small opening that it eroded the stones on the side and deposited them in the middle. It's flowing, and actually DPW was gonna be taking care of that, so they may have already done it, but, they hadn't
And
as of
just
last week.
temporarily cleaning it out, but
Well, the cement is not compromised, it's just the rocks got displaced, so what I've said to them is let's look at resizing the rocks, but in the meantime, to get the impediment out of the way,
Right.
just put the rocks back up on the slope, but they're gonna be looking at, who is it that's looking at resizing? Ty and Bond is looking at resizing things over there.
and
Cause
what
that
ab-
culvert was done in 2012 when I first got here.
Oh, it was?
Those two were, the one under Uncle Beanie's and then the one under
South Chatham?
Old Wharf. No,
Oh,
we're not talking about South Chatham yet.
that thing
We should
gets,
be, but,
yeah, really, because it gets
yeah,
obstructed.
That was an NRCS salt marsh project.
yep,
Um,
yep,
It's good, I don't, they put gates on them
yeah.
for just a couple property owners upgrading. But otherwise, a lot of water's coming in, there's no doubt. My mother has, like, a backyard, waterfront property at times. It just comes right in.
You wanna see some,
That's the salt marsh behind the beach.
Yes, right, it'll fill in like a pond now.
Yeah, uh-huh.
It never
Lot of
used to.
water.
you wanna see some flooding down in Wellfleet at Duck Harbor down there.
Oh my
It-
goodness, yeah.
It blew through the
Yeah.
dune out there, flooded that. I was down there the last weekend, down on Old Colony Road, and part of it was blocked off because it was flooded at low tide. The water got in there and can't get out fast enough, and they actually, down by Merritt Island and Bound Brook, and it was just completely flooded. They had the road blocked off. What a mess, unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's rising, John. We're gonna be underwater in 20 years.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna be further underwater than we are now in 10 years.
All right.
All right, enough fun for one night.
So would someone, I will entertain a motion.
Oh, I'll make a motion, we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
All right, goodbye.